Tonight we are on the Beaver Network and we are doing Truth to Discourse with Beaver Politics. And we have a few things we're going to talk to tonight. It's a beautiful day, isn't it? The sun is out. People are enjoying weather all across Canada. I had to climb into my little cave so I can speak without too many issues here. There we go. Now I've got it set up. Tapping is clapping, sharing is caring, obviously. Oh, my tripod, I gotta tighten it. Gotta tighten it. Not quite as ready as I would like to be on days like today. We have so much to discuss in Canada today. So much. It's been a week of how to pin my goals. Cha-cha-cha. Getting ready. Frontline Feminist is going to be here tonight with us. And we are going to talk about what's going on in Canada. And the crazy that's going on these days. Holy moly. I'm going to get Frontline up here.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Well, my first thought actually wasn't even Canada right now. It's the stuff that's coming out about the whistleblowers in terms of Doge and what Doge was actually trying to do from the beginning, which is what we all thought. But now they're talking about it finally.
Yeah, the out loud part. So what have I missed? Because I was in the garden part of the day and running around, so...
So there's basically a whistleblower that's come out to say what we've all been thinking and what everybody's been scared of, that the reason that Doge has been doing what they've been doing is that they want to create a master database of all U.S. citizens so they can attack dissent, so they can punish those who decide to protest the regime. And they're probably going to use something like Palantir, which is something that I talked about months ago, which is Big Brother software, right? Because if you take all this information from all these different government agencies, you put them all together, you can create an AI-ran master database on every U.S. citizen. Whistleblowers are saying that it's being used to track immigrants, punish critics of Musk and Trump, and even monitor federal employees for wrongthink using AI. Like, it's full-blown authoritarianism with a cherry on top.
Wait, holy cow, that's so scary.
Yeah. It's, over the past 100 days, Doge teams have grabbed personal data about U.S. residents from dozens of federal databases and are reportedly merging it all into a master database at the Department of Homeland Security. This month, House Democratic lawmakers reported that a whistleblower had come forward to reveal that the master database will combine data from such federal agencies as the Social Security Administration, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Department of Health and Human Services. The whistleblower also alleged that Doge workers are filling backpacks with multiple laptops, each one loaded with purloined agency data. For years, me, which is the reporter saying this, have obsessed about just how much of our big tech companies, how much of our data big tech companies possess. They know our locations, monitor our browsing and online shopping histories, and use that info to make inferences about our interests and habits. It goes on and on, but like, it's now finally being talked about on a wide scale, but I don't know how safe the people that are talking about it are going to be. Oh, I'm on the big screen. Hey, guys.
I'm just playing around. Sorry.
Hi, Miss Lotus Lady. How's it going?
Hey, Miss Lotus, how are you? Wow, it's like all of our worst fears, 1984, you know. Here we come. Here we are.
Yeah, I know. And like I was telling everybody this was going to happen and everybody told me that I was crazy and now finally experts are starting to say what I've said from day one.
It's so hard to see that because I mean, I was saying this like, I mean, I remember 5 years ago writing letters to government employees and politicians and stuff like that. And everybody told me I was, you know, a little off base or a little too worried, or we have checks and balances in place that won't happen.
It's it's crazy.
So there's no checks and balances that won't happen, or that's going to cover it. When somebody transitions, if you refuse to hold people accountable, they will do the worst.
Hoping that at least because it's now being talked about on a massive scale, there's going to be a lot of attempts to try to push back. But what this reporter says is that unfortunately, Americans did not have proper security and privacy laws to combat something like this.
I've always been saying they've been playing the long game. So these were things that just weren't in place. And I mean, America, they've already fallen into fascism. So this is just the next step they're falling into, right? And, you know, it worries me. I don't know if they are seeing it. I guess some people are seeing it out there, but I mean, what can we do? Really? And I mean that with all sincerity.
Yeah.
To help them or like navigate this.
Yeah, like what this reporter says is the deeper problem is that the Privacy Act lacks real teeth. It does not give judges the ability to levy meaningful fines or easily halt illegal actions. It failed to establish an enforcement arm to investigate privacy violations in a way that courts can't. And since then, Congress hasn't been able to pass comprehensive policy laws or create stronger enforcement mechanisms. That makes the United States the only country in the 38-member Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development without a data protection agency to enforce comprehensive privacy laws. In the European Union, each country has a dedicated data protection authority that can conduct investigations, write rules, issue fines, and even demand a halt to data processing. Without a privacy cop on the beat, Americans can submit a Privacy Act request to try to find out what data Doge is holding about them or hope that judges side with them in one of the dozens of lawsuits winding their way through court. Still, Doge continues going from agency to agency, grabbing more and more data. Whew. Yeah.
And they're so far behind now, like from responding or anything, like there's not much they can do, especially now that they passed this piece in the United States where any American citizen can be deported. So if you think I stuttered, I didn't. I used those words together. American citizen can be deported.
As Trump called them publicly, homegrown.
So you don't even have to be, all you have to do, I guess, is be what he foresees as the enemy, and you will be deported.
Because I'm afraid that there's not really going to be a lot of due process for anybody once they decide you're a criminal, and they can decide that anybody's a criminal.
And they can just send anybody anywhere? Or are they all just sending them to El Salvador?
El Salvador is where they're going to make most money and where the deals are, so.
Yeah, they'll go after the protesters. I think that has a lot to do, too, with why they had all of those drones in the skies. I think those drones are real, and I think they are going to be used to kind of monitor people in the United States. They have that technology to be able to take pictures and monitor people. I know that there was one of the Doge people that was exposing some of the information. And oh, Cookie, you always make me so happy.
You gotta bring a little bit of light to the situation because it's so dark, and the gingerbread cookie helps me do that.
We need that. So this Doge fella was giving people information and kind of telling them what was going on. And within a day, within a couple of hours of him reporting it, he got home and there was pictures from a drone at his house showing him and like, we know what you're doing.
That was another whistleblower. I forgot exactly what it was about. I'm having a brain blank right now.
It was Doge.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You're right. Because there was that, they sent him pictures of him walking his dog in his neighborhood. He was brave for coming out even after that, though. Super brave.
Super brave. Like, I was like, I'm glad he did it, but it's just like, it's so hard to watch because you think, what would you do in that situation? You know, all of us would be fighting and probably in that same position that he's in right now.
That martial law is going to get called within the next couple months.
I think it's going to happen right away because people are going to start freaking out.
Becoming more and more confident in my predictions because so far each one of them has turned out to be right.
The problem with that is, so this is what I sat up at night thinking about last night. I wonder if we can start like, what was Harper's group? What was that called again? IDU. They set up think tanks a long time ago, and that's how they came to this plan. I think we need to start creating think tanks across Canada and start working on ideas and solutions. Not like, oh, that's a terrible idea because of, like, real plans and real ideas that are going to combat some of this shit.
Yeah.
So
we've already talked about that. We need like our own version of the IDU for the other side.
Yeah, we need to create a think tank and we need to start having conversations. Because right now, I don't know that we're going to change many minds on the other side. But if we can figure out a way to start having these conversations and start coming up with solutions, I think that's where, with the solutions, I think that's where we're going to start making ground. Because the conversations, we can't seem to change.
This is another one of my predictions right now. I think that as the United States gets darker and darker and people actually wake up to what's really happening down there, because I think that's the biggest problem with a lot of the Maple Magas up here, is that they didn't actually get enough information about what's happening in the States, or they didn't believe it. But once it gets worse and worse, it will be undeniable. And then I think a bunch of them, even though they might not admit it, secretly are going to be like, oh my God, yikes. I definitely do not want that for Canada.
We got a flash goal here. We need 11 gifters to send roses in the next 15 minutes. So that'll help me move. And if anybody wants to join us, you could do little roses in the next 15 minutes. Oh, you're awesome, guys. Sorry to interrupt you. Jeepers. You beat our flash goal. Thank you. You're the best. I don't know what that is. It must be a new like game on TikTok or something. That you guys are the best. So we got to do a think tank, got to do an IUD style thing. IUD just sounds like the thing that prevents pregnancies. So hashtag dyslexia. I swear to God, I have dyslexia. And don't you notice that with our conversations when we're talking?
I just had to point that out because I need to bring a little bit of humor into these conversations because what's happening.
It is so funny. I laugh at myself all the time because I get these things backwards. And then when I get them backwards, sometimes I think it's so funny I just need to continue doing it.
Yeah, so that's what's going on in the States. And I mean, there's so much going on in the States.
No, I'm not joining.
Well, what'd you come up for? You requested.
No, I'm not joining. Oops, my bad.
I'll mute you, Perry, if you want. Or you can just hang up on us. We don't mind. You decide.
But yeah, there's already military on the southern border right now, which can arrest and deal with U.S. citizens, which is not what the U.S. military is supposed to be doing. There's Elon's Doge that keeps, collecting information on everybody and putting it together in a master AI software. There's Trump, who keeps suing any journalist that speaks out against him. There's also now they're letting right-wing influencers get access to the Oval Office and to the press in the White House, like the press room in the White House, sorry. But God, and I mean, people are just being disappeared, deported. We're hearing like young kids are being taken away as well, from like cancer treatment that they were going through. I don't know. I am so freaked out for our neighbors. Like, I am so freaked out for our neighbors. Bevan, what are the lies? What are the lies, Bevan? Because all of the things that I just said can be fact checked. I know you don't like facts, but they can be fact checked. Just FYI.
Many numbers is here. Hello.
Hello.
How are you this evening?
Good. How are you?
Good. What would you like to chat about?
I would like to hold on, I just want to pull it up really quick. So I just want to talk about affordability. I just want to talk about the last Liberal term. I just want to talk about a few other things. Sorry, just 1 second. I just have to pull this up really quick, and I'll be just 1 quick second.
And what's your name, my friend?
Just call him UPW.
Sure, you can call me that. Okay. So
and for TikTok purposes, I'd like your age, please.
Sure. So November 1st, 2006. So I am 19.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So for the first thing I would like to talk about, I just want to talk about housing costs versus wage increases under the Liberal government. So if you look,
we were talking about global affairs at this point.
Okay, so but is this not like a debate channel for political?
Right now we're at Truth and Disclosure, so this is kind of a discussion panel about the world's events and what's going on.
Okay, I see. Okay, all right.
Would you like to talk about anything we've been discussing so far? Right now we're kind of at geopolitical.
No, I just want to talk about. I just want to debate the politics between the Conservative Party and the Liberal Party of Canada.
Frontline, are you up to that, or do you want to continue with the
Sure, why not? I know.
Do you know UPW?
Pardon?
Yeah, he's been in the comments section before. I think he was up on the panel once.
Anyway, so the first thing I just want to talk about really quick is housing costs. So housing has almost doubled, or has doubled in major cities. So for example, Montreal, it's gone from 306,500 to 671,600, and Toronto has gone from 704,800 to 1,200,000.
Just in order to hold on, just 1 sec. In order to have a proper debate, though, I need to know where your numbers are coming from and what your sources are, so that I can actually double check them.
For sure. So my source is the French debate, and they pulled it up when talking about affordability. It's just a screenshot of it. So that's my source.
But that's just people talking. Like, I need an actual government database to show that those are numbers. Do you know where they said it came from? Did it come from Stats Canada?
Well, it came from the CBC during the live debate, so I'm quite sure it's a good source. It came from the French debate.
Was it by the fact checkers, or was it just a politician speaking?
It was pulled up by the fact checkers. Yeah.
Okay.
You can. Sorry, I don't know the exact time code of that, but basically, the announcer said, "Here are the statistics on housing, how we fix it." Yeah. So it's pulled up.
Okay. Can I just get those numbers again, and I just need to write them down. That's all.
Yeah, for sure. So Montreal's gone from 306,500 in 2015, so when the Liberal government started, to 671,600 in 2025. Toronto's gone from 704,800 to 1,278,300 in this 2015 and 2025. And then Vancouver's gone from 1,387,200 to 2,029,400.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So the first thing
I got
want
the
to
rough
talk about.
estimates.
So the first thing I want to talk
Rough
about.
estimates.
So the first thing I want to talk about is how. So yeah, housing has jumped up massively, but at the same time, median income has only increased 20%. So that looks quite bad for the Liberals. Along with that, if you look at the actual economic growth of Canada, as noted from a study from the Fraser Institute, from 2002 to 2014, Canada's GDP per capita kept roughly on pace with the OECD. But from 2014, so right around when the Liberals came in 2015, but quite close. From 2014 to 2022, Canada's average growth rate has declined sharply, ranking third lowest among 30 countries over this period in the OECD. Consequently, in dollar terms, Canada's GDP per person has only increased $1,325 in USD during this period, compared to the OECD average of increase of 5,070 in 2015. So we've had about 1/5 of the growth of the average OECD country. Along with that, if you also look at other OECD sources, Canada's economic growth has only been about 1% from 2014 to 2024,
So
where
what
the
are you
USA's has been
debating?
19.
What are you debating? Because you're spewing off a bunch of facts, but what are you debating?
I'm just debating how the Liberals have poorly managed our government, because not only have they lowered, because
So I see you took a lot of time to go over those facts. Did you spend any time going into what happened before the Liberal government got in? Like to how the housing jumped. Did you do any research on that?
I don't know exactly what you're talking about. No.
Well, for every action,
So,
there's a reaction, right? For every
yeah.
action, there's a reaction. So within Canada, Stephen Harper allowed houses to jump really high. And a lot of people warned him that this was a bad idea. At the same time, he was selling off affordable housing in Canada. And economists around the world warned Stephen Harper that this was a very bad idea. And if they did that, that he was going to create a housing bubble within Canada. And he said, frankly, that's not my problem. I don't think, low income people will buy houses. So he was totally okay with doing that. At the same time he was doing that, because I was a young person at that time and I was having my family and I had 2 children at the time. I was paying about $350 a month for childcare. That rose to $1,500 a month I was paying for childcare under the Harper government. So there's a whole bunch of reasons why when the Liberals came into that space, that housing was rising, right? It's not just like there's a whole bunch of actions that happen.
For sure.
I can add a little bit to that because, like, I know that because you're young, you just didn't experience the Harper years as an adult, so you probably didn't know what was going on. But Canada stopped building social housing in the 1990s, and yes, it was under a Liberal federal government, but it was very much supported by provincial Conservatives. And Conservative governments in Ontario, Alberta, and other provinces sold off public land to developers instead of using it for affordable housing. Like Doug Ford is a perfect example of that. And then the Harper Conservatives had 9 years to address that housing issue, and they chose to do nothing significant. There was no meaningful investment in social housing or policies in order to curb speculation. Like, do you know who allowed foreign investment in real estate speculation to grow without minimal regulation?
I know.
I don't.
Christy Clark.
I don't. You can answer that for me if you know it.
I just did. Christy Clark.
Okay. But the only thing I want to comment in response
those were all
to that,
Conservatives, just so you know.
I know. But the only thing I want to comment in response to that is, if the Conservatives were so terrible and caused this entire housing issue, then why has housing continued to spike? And if you look at, and I'm not just saying, and you could say, oh, it's other countries as well, but if you look at the G7, Canada's housing immediately, when Harper left, was higher than other countries, but it has spiked massively under the Liberal government, and it's continued
Because
to
that's
spike,
why
and it has not
economists
gone
were
down.
warning Harper that this was going to be such a dangerous thing to do to Canadians. It was going to be so hard to climb out of. It wasn't going to be an easy thing to climb out of. It wasn't going to be easy solutions. When you're dinging families $1,500 a month for childcare, when there's, then people are going to cut down on having kids or not going to have kids at all, right? Because they want an opportunity to own. But when people can't afford to own, that's for years and years and years. Like I'm in my 50s, and under a Liberal government, I was just able to buy my first house. And I can guarantee you, if I was under a Conservative government, that wouldn't have happened.
Okay, but do you not think that the Liberals are responsible to our current housing?
Hold on.
No, I
Look,
don't.
hold on though. I want to give him that because I like to be fair to all people. And, the thing is that 9 years is honestly not enough to put out a wildfire that started decades ago. And it takes more than a couple of government cycles to put it out, especially when provincial governments keep throwing like gasoline on the fire. Now, they did try. It's not like they didn't try, but I can definitely say that I wish they did a better job. I just don't think that Conservatives would have magically fixed it either, because it is a very complex problem. But they did launch the National Housing Strategy in 2017. Unfortunately, it was slow, a little bit underfunded, but they did create the first-time homebuyer incentive. They introduced a foreign buyer ban and a tax on empty homes. But you have to realize that, like, the government does not set prices, right? A lot of this is because of developers and foreign investments, corporations, billionaires. Like, they
and
don't
lack of
set
housing.
prices.
Lack of housing too, right? When there's less affordable housing, when you have less of something, the price is going to go higher.
Yeah, and what I wanted to say is, like, the Conservative plan was always to cut red tape and let the free market fix it. But that just means that they would just hand even more power to those private developers and landlords, which could make things much, much worse. Like, at least the Liberals acknowledge the housing crisis, and Conservatives act like the market will magically solve it if we just keep cutting red tape. There was no real solutions there.
For sure. My only response to that is, why is the U.S.'s housing rate so much lower? They're the most free market in the entire world. The U.S. has much lower housing rates. Much lower. If you look at a G7 graph, I can pull it up. But they have much lower housing costs, while also having higher wages. So why would you say in response to that?
Higher wages?
The U.S. in general has higher wages. Yes.
No, they don't.
No, they don't.
No, they don't.
No, they don't. They have more billionaires. So when you take averages, things get skewed because we have a lot less very, very super ultra wealthy people in Canada. You have to look at things like minimum wage, medium income wage. They don't make more money. Like, our minimum wage is actually higher than the United States. Minimum wage in the States is $7 an hour.
Okay. I understand, and I was going to talk about the GDP per
So
capita.
I just
but
have to
understand that.
interject UPW. So when we're having these conversations and you're coming to debate, is this changing any of your minds, or you're just coming to debate people and that's your gig?
Well, am I changing your mind?
I'm asking you a question.
Well, I'm
Is
coming.
it changing
I'm
your
coming
mind, or are you just here for debate?
Well, I'm coming to do both. If you guys can provide me information, then I may change my mind. But just like your mind isn't being changed by my.
No, I'm asking you what your purpose is. You don't know what.
Can I say something
it's
real
to
quick?
both debate and to see if my mind can be changed.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Prairie Princess. Welcome.
Hi, I just want to be in here for a minute. I just want to say something you might not know. There are other factors in play as well about purchasing a home. So, my husband was 59 and I was 49, and we had 15% down. We were about to buy the house in a private sale, and COVID happened. During a time of the lockdowns during COVID, when the banks were rejecting everybody in my area and the nearest city, Medicine Hat, because I don't know exactly the reason. The ladies might be able to explain that better than me, but they were rejecting everybody. I mean, there was a house in town broken down. It was a fixer-upper for $50,000 and their loan got rejected. We were first-time home buyers. I had 15% down. I had to wait another year to get 20% down because COVID caused and they would not give out loans. So there's many factors that can come into play as to how come people can't get a home. And I just wanted to mention it because nobody talked about that period where all of us who had the down payments were rejected just because of the pandemic. Okay, you can drop me now.
Thank you. I actually didn't have that experience and I didn't know that happened to people. I'm sorry that happened.
Yeah, no, we had about 15% down. We were doing a private sale. It happened in our area. There was like 3 houses in a week in our farming community. They wouldn't even take people's money who were using their parents to help out because of what was going on. I heard Medicine Hat was rejecting buying as well because it was during that COVID lockdown of uncertainty. And so even if you had, like we had 15% down as a first time home buyer and our house was only 130,000 because I got them down from 170 and my house is only 20 years old. So I had a good deal, but they were still saying no because of what was going on during the pandemic. They just didn't, I don't know exactly the reason, but I know that it was somehow causing a whole bunch of housing problems in my area. And I live in southern Alberta. They said the house was worthless. My husband just yelled from downstairs. They said because of the pandemic, it was classified worthless and it just wasn't a trusting market. It's very confusing, but that pandemic caused problems nobody could expect.
I agree. Wow, that's brutal. Thanks for pointing that out.
That happened. It's terrible.
Oh no, we finally got the house a year later at 20% down. I kept my $130,000 deal. It was worth about 190 classified by the town. It's only 20 years old. It's all good. But a bunch of us in the area, in this town and in the neighboring city, were just cut off. So it had nothing to do with the government. It had everything to do with the scenario going on at that time around the world. So I don't know if it happened in other places, but we got completely cut off from buying a house.
Yeah, I think when I talked to Pixie today, she shared a similar experience at the same time. So yeah, I believe that.
Thank you for having me up.
Thanks for coming. Take care, Perry.
You can let me down. I don't know how to do it.
I can do it. I can do it.
Thank you. And we've got Jazzy here. Welcome.
Hey.
Just for TikTok purposes, can you please share your age?
Do I have to?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, you gotta like.
Usually I have a dog in my picture. But
We know Jazzy. She's been up a bunch of times.
Okay, thank you.
it's okay. Okay. No, I was just saying they just made an announcement about auto tariffs.
What did they say?
Canada's getting a relief. No, I guess it's so late. There's not much detail going into it, but there was like a breaking going across CTV News, but it's on auto parts, not on automobiles. But the person speaking said that they're very optimistic that something tomorrow is going to happen. Maybe, I don't know if the visit is tomorrow. I have no idea, but
Canada-US-Mexico agreement on trade will not be hit with Donald Trump's tariffs. It's the latest sign of relief for the deeply integrated North American automobile industry, besieged by multiple levels of tariffs. So we're getting tariff relief for auto parts.
I'm just going to say this, and then I'll get down and let you guys. I could be completely reading into this, but I don't know. I'm sure you guys heard the speech that was given about Carney. Trump did about Carney, saying how he was a nice guy. I firmly, I don't trust There's lots that I don't trust, but manipulation, 100% I trust is capable, and that's it with him. I think he's setting it up to make his base to think that the prime minister is a great guy for when he does, quote unquote, give in. I could be wrong. I hope I'm right. But I think that that's why he made those comments, is because he knows
he's making these. Okay, so this is, I already knew this was going to happen. So as we know, after the 2020 election, Trump started campaigning on day one after he lost. He's going to do the same thing because, as we know, all of these far right parties are working together under the IDU. So he's already going to start manipulating people to try to get the Conservative Party, if they are still members of the IDU by then, to win in the next election, because these guys have been playing at this for 2 decades. It's not something new. So he is going to try and make it sound like, oh, I get along with Carney so well, because he wants to keep feeding the base. But again, I don't know what's going to happen because there's a lot of infighting going on in the Conservative Party right now, and they might actually split back up into the old school progressive conservatives and then like the old Reform Party. And if that happens, I don't think that the progressive conservatives are going to stick around with the IDU. I think that it's going to be the Reform Party that sticks around with the IDU. So we have to see what happens. We're right at the beginning of this next new term, but we now know that in the new world that we're living in, politicians campaign for elections for years and years before the election, because that's how they do it, right? So we got to be diligent. We got to point it out, and we got to do our best to have faith that people are going to get more educated. And as I said earlier today, when people start seeing what's going on in the States, because it's going to become more and more public, the atrocious stuff that's going on down there, I think people across the globe are going to start waking up a little bit more. And we need to start educating about the IDU like all the time, because a bunch of parties working together globally, that's corrupt.
Yes. I wanted to bring up to the younger gentleman that's in the chat, and I'm not going to try to change your mind, or sure. This may mean nothing in the grand scheme of things, but it's something I saw today, and I think his account was Alberta. I shared it. Obviously, we're not friends, TikTok connection there, but with Carney's plan and modular homes, I personally live in a modular home. It's beautiful, and that's not me bragging. That's just, I personally think it's not a mansion, but it's my home. But this video is a man from Alberta who, I think it's Alberta Builder, and he has worked in a modular factory, and he describes how they work, and it's absolutely, given that I live in one, I thought I really never thought of the process. And I know it sounds crazy when he says how many homes he can build through this process, but if you watch that video and actually saw it, like heard him explain it, it's unbelievable how it works. And I hope and pray that does happen, and that it all works out and housing goes down, because I don't negate anything that you're saying about the affordability of housing for you guys. I feel bad. And I hope that his plan, that it works, but I would really try to find that video, because it's crazy how fast they're doing it. And he even said he was part of one that built things to go on oil rigs.
Yeah.
So they're capable of doing massive things. So if some of that may sound crazy when he's saying we're going to build them so fast, I mean, it does sound wild when you say, what was his number? 500,000?
Yeah. And you see modular homes. You can drive around. Most cities, most towns have a space where you can go look at them. I've been into mine, and they're beautiful.
I think people are thinking modular homes in the sense of, like, if you looked up a wartime modular home, but I also don't want to come across saying that you need to have a fancy home either. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that the process, I mean, the facilities are there.
Yeah.
And if it does happen and everything is successful and, promises are kept, I do hope that does, for the younger generation, bring down homes. And I am a liberal, I'm not going to lie, but I do feel for you when it comes to that. And I know I can't change your mind and I can't
Oh, you
justify any of it.
my
I'm
mind can
just,
totally change. I've swung different ways politically. I just personally feel now the modular homes do sound like a really good idea, and I do see what you mean. But just my only question that I just had asked before is, you guys are saying how more open market will just harm the housing market, and I'm not commenting on the modular homes. I think those sound like a great idea. My only comment is, the USA again has much lower housing costs. So
but
Please, can I respond to that?
yeah, for sure, I'd love to hear your response.
Just because I've had this argument many times with people, and it's a really misleading comparison because the US is a massive country with totally different housing laws, with totally different banking systems and zoning policies. And even then, it is just not true to say that they have better housing prices across the board, because if you try to buy a home in New York, LA, San Francisco, Seattle, it's going to be just as bad, if not way worse, than places like Toronto or Vancouver. There's a ton of US cities that are facing their own housing crisis. Rents are skyrocketing, homelessness is exploding, and in many places, affordable housing barely exists for Americans. And Canada has fewer bigger cities. We have way stricter zoning rules. And until we tackle this with actual public housing and proper rent control, there's no party, liberal or conservative or NDP or any of them, that's going to magically fix it.
and
Just
I'm
a
gonna-
sec. I'd like to give Lefty the floor. Actually, welcome, Lefty. Lefty, I'm sorry.
Hi guys. I just wanted to chime in this housing because I actually
Hold on. We need to get an age for TikTok purposes.
I'm 28.
28. Thank you.
So I actually lived in the US in Iowa specifically before I moved to Canada. So I kind of have an experience of both. And I think it's a little bit the things are not greener, and I'm also an older Gen Z. So when I lived, for example, it's kind of like how housing is a little bit affordable in many areas in Alberta, but you can't say the same thing about like Ontario and British Columbia. That's the same thing in the US too. It's affordable in places like Texas, but you can't afford a house in Chicago. My friend, she works in Chicago. She's a Gen Z too, and she's like she hasn't been able to afford a house yet. So there's a lot of dynamics that plays into that. Just because there is a data that's showing like, oh my God, the houses are affordable. It has to do with a province. Like Texas is doing a really good job with the housing market, but that does not translate into the entire country being very affordable. The same thing that goes to here too. And also, our system is very different. Our premiers are also very responsible. Like I live in Ontario. People keep blaming the federal government, but I haven't heard anybody blame my premier for what he has done or not done for housing, because he has not done anything. And today he's out here talking about judges, he's out here talking about bike lanes, but I have not heard a single thing about him talking about how he's going to improve housing affordability. And also, since I'm a young, like older Gen Z, I was born in 1996. I have a lot of friends in the US, my age group. None of them owns houses yet. And it's also very interesting for me about how some young people speak this day when they're like 19, 20, and they're thinking about owning a house, which is kind of interesting for me because, like, you kind of, I mean, if people have different paths. So some people finish college, some people go to trade school. So that's what they think about. But it's kind of interesting that people 19 and 20 are thinking about owning in a house right now, which is not a bad thing to think, but it takes time. My parents owned their first house in 2015, in the start of Trudeau government. And it took them like, they were living in rented houses and stuff like that. And it takes time. And my parents owned their house in their 40s. They didn't own it when they were 20 or something, because it's a journey. And I don't know where it changed. That's like this mindset of young people that I want to own a house tomorrow. That doesn't happen. And there's also a lot of things that people have to change the way they approach. Like if you're looking for a $250 house in downtown Toronto, that's not going to happen. You need to go outward. But I also feel like people do not want to make that I don't want to use the word sacrifices, but I know somebody who was used to living in Toronto, couldn't afford, but they went to move to Niagara, and now they can afford a house now. So that people are really, I don't know if people these days don't want to make those type of choices. I mean, we should definitely push our governments to work for us because we work for them and they do work for us. But there are also like simple things that we need to kind of outlook and see like how we can change and all of this stuff, which I think we are kind of not doing. So I don't know. This whole mindset has changed, which is very interesting for me. And I do agree because I actually work in recruitment. I do feel like our wages hasn't increased, but it's again very disingenuous to compare it to the US again, because unlike the US, we have universal health care. We have a lot of laws that, even with the wages we have, gives us the assistance to go by. The people in the US don't have that assistance. They have medical debt, they have housing debt, they have so many debt. Just because they get paid high does not mean they have a higher living standard, because they have expenses that eats their income up. So there are a lot of factors that we need to look in. So I don't like how we compare Canada to the US. I want us to start comparing us to European nations like Finland and Norway, and even Australia. Like, for example, I love the way the Australian electoral reform is, which I think we should do. So I think my vision as a young or older Gen Z is we need to stop with the comparison of the US, because in my opinion, it's a failing economy, failing country. And we need to look towards, our foundation of a country is not American. It's from Europe, it's the First Nations, it's a lot of things that has nothing to do with the US, even the French. So we need to start looking towards them and comparing instead of the US. That's just my opinion.
I just want to comment on that debt comment you made. And this is from the BBC, so a reputable source. But Canada has higher debt to GDP, like household debt to GDP levels, than the UK, the US, Japan, France, Germany, Italy, than many other countries. Canada has very high debt. So to say, by household. So to say that that other country like the US has quite a bit less, actually, looking at this graph from the BBC. So to say that Canada's some golden goose. Sorry, I'm not trying to be rude here. But to say that Canada has less debt than other developed countries, like per household, is just not true.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Lefty.
So when I say debt is, like, for example, many people in the US do have a healthcare debt compared to the income. We don't have that because, we pay the taxes that go into this healthcare. Because of that, we don't have to be worried about that. And also, so when I talk about that, definitely people would have debt in terms of like, I don't know, their mortgage, or like, even in that, I don't know the exact statistics. Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. I wonder if you just hit the wrong button. You're right. Medical debt in the United States can debilitate somebody. If you had a bad gallbladder, that could send you into complete bankruptcy. Just a common thing. When when I had cancer, went to the doctor, had a little procedure done, had an operation. I was out the next day. I didn't get a bill. I didn't get anything. I just went on with my life.
Point out something as well. I'm pretty sure that he was talking about government debt per capita. Well, he was talking about overall debt, and he was saying that people's debt in Canada per person is higher than the United States, right?
Because of high mortgages.
Yeah, but there's a lot of other things that are misleading in that. So I wanted to point it out because that's definitely an issue too, even though in the United States they also have some high mortgage debt as well. But because our population is way smaller, we don't have the same, like, for example, massive military budget to inflate the US debt, like, which matters more. Like, what matters more is our debt to GDP ratio. And Canada is still lower than many other developed countries, including the US. So like a huge chunk of our recent debt came from pandemic relief, which is something else that we actually wanted, right? It saved lives and livelihoods. So personal debt is heavily driven by housing costs, which are the responsibility of provincial and municipal governments. But just to lump it all in and say that we have higher government debt per capita it's misleading, because it doesn't take into account so many of the factors that we have to be looking at. The debt
I have a
narrative is
question.
a fear mongering narrative.
I'd like
Wasn't
to say hi
that
to
the
Curious
17-year-old from the other night?
He
That
sounded
was
like it.
that's his name.
Yeah.
That's the 17-year-old that was in the military from the other night.
Christy, how are you tonight?
Couldn't get my mic. I'm good. How are you guys?
It's Christine. Thanks for joining us. Good, thanks.
Yes. Thanks for having me. I posted a couple of videos today, actually. And the one thing I wanted to point out, because I'm in a group that used to be called Canadians Against Polyev, or Canadians Against Pierre. And the group originally was for fixing disinformation, but then now that the election's over, it started to turn into this kind of hate thing back and forth, right? And so I think the thing that I was trying to give people hope is that the conservatives right now think that they're 8 million strong, right? They think that they did this and this blue wave came. They think that there's 8 million of them, but there really isn't. If we break it down, there's a lot of voters out there who literally pay zero attention, right? They don't watch the news. They don't have time. They got kids and hockey and soccer and all the things. They just don't pay attention. All they know is everybody around them is mad. And if they're mad, then we have to vote the opposite of what's in there right now. So there's that kind of people. And then you've got a couple groups of people who are believing in some of the, the rhetoric around Carney and Brookfield and China, and he's going to bring the carbon tax back and all that stuff. And they don't fact check any of it. And we know that, but they fell for it. They got conned. As time goes by, those people are going to figure it out, right? They're going to be like, maybe we were wrong about that. They might never admit it, but they're going to figure out they were wrong. And then you've got the number 3, which is the Maple Mega down the rabbit hole, not going to save them. And so my advice to this group was, okay, we need to back off a little bit and remember that like 2 out of 3 parts of that group are regular citizens who had regular everyday jobs, who truly believed that this man was going to give them what they wanted. And they're angry about that. And those are the people that we can bring back to the good side. And I don't even mean we have to convince them to be liberals. We just need to convince them to go back to normal conservatives, not the extreme, right? And the more we isolate those people from the rest of the group by sharing information about what the Ontario government is doing or what the Alberta government is doing, and people start to separate, what's actually the Fed's responsibility versus what's provincial responsibility, and we just keep that education up for the next 4 years, though that group of nasty people is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And I want them to feel as isolated as possible so that we can save the good ones and just isolate the bad apples.
Interesting take. I like it.
That was my thought.
I think you're bang on.
We really got to change the needle, and I think these are the conversations that are most important to be having right now, is how to change that needle, right? Sometimes I unfollow people that share too much misinformation from the far right too, even if they think they're doing a service to the world. I feel like sometimes they're doing a disservice to us because they're helping kind of bring on that misinformation, even though they're not meaning to. And I think that's something I focus on a lot, is making sure that the right information is out there. And even if I don't know the right information and somebody corrects me, taking that correction.
I think I want to focus on like holding the government accountable, because no matter if you're liberal or conservative or NDP, I want the system to be working for everyone. So like I want to focus on what are the conservative needs, what did they want, and then see what our government's doing, like moving forward for the next 4 or 5 years, seeing if this current government is addressing their needs and highlighting that, because many of our governments aren't transparent about the goings on of what's happening. So I think as content creators, I feel almost a responsibility to make people aware of these things so they can empower themselves to feel like they can make their government accountable and working for them as well.
I agree. Speaking of that, though, for a second, something that somebody said here just reminded me of something. You guys know we lost a seat, right?
Yep.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Been pulled back.
Yeah, we lost a seat to the Bloc Québécois. There's going to be an official recount, but it seems like there was a couple of votes that had to get recounted, and the Bloc Québécois took it by like 40 something votes. But as I said, there's going to be an official recount, but it does seem like we lost a seat to the Bloc.
Ay, ay, ay. That's a little stressful. I was hoping somebody would show up and say we got an extra seat.
Yeah, I think that's what we were all hoping for.
I didn't know what to say.
No, I kind of. That's not the news I wanted, Frontline.
Oh,
You know me, it's not about what people want to hear, it's about what's going on in reality.
I'm still not worried because there's still 7 NDP and 1 Green, and moving forward, I think most things that go through the House are going to be kind of collectively voted on by those 3. I do think majority of it too, the Bloc is in line with the Liberal. Like when I heard them talking about working with the Liberal government, they seemed more in favor of working with the Liberals than the Conservatives. So I'm not too concerned.
Good, good.
Neither am I. I'm just giving you guys a little bit of facts about what happened today, that's all.
Yeah.
So, any thoughts around when Pierre Poilievre is going to be moving? Do we know?
I don't know. How long does he have to move? Is it like 30 days or longer? How long? I'm not sure.
I mean,
No, exactly. I just know that the Conservative Party is fighting within itself right now because some of them really want Pierre as their leader, and some of them are saying, "Nope, you're done. We don't want you as our leader." So there's been a lot of fun fighting on X between them. But I'm guessing he's getting 30 days to move out.
Yeah, I talked to a Conservative today, and he has got a strong dislike for Doug Ford, and Pierre Poilievre is just the best guy in the world, and he shouldn't have to go anywhere. And if the people want him, then if he was in a neighborhood, the people should have voted for him, and they're a very disloyal group of people, he said.
I just think it's ironic how when Mark Carney was elected leader and many of the Conservatives were crying out in my videos saying he can't be leader, he doesn't even have a seat in any riding, and their fight was all about this. And as soon as it happens that their leader is forced out from having his seat, just crickets.
oh, such awesome.
Good for me, not for thee.
Curious, I just wanted to say that your videos today have been so educational, and yeah, I just love watching them. You've taught me so much about my ignorance.
Thank you. I try to make things easily digestible for people because I know I don't want people to have to look into these videos that are full of so much word salad and not know what's going on. I just want it to be easily understood because I know a lot of people like easily accessible information, and I try my best to do that while still being able to provide some sort of facts and sources to back it up. So if I can be that source for someone, I am happy to do this job.
So I'm going to admit something, and please don't judge me because I came from a province where the education on Indigenous people just basically didn't exist. And I tell this story all the time because it shows me how ignorant, there's no other word for it, I was. When I was in grade 7, but it was a whole generation of me that was raised in that province. So you educating would have now, I look back and just think, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. So we moved when I was in grade 7, and the social studies teacher asked the class, I was only there for like 4 or 5 days, and the teacher asked if someone had a personal Native American history to share. And I raised my hand and said, yes, I had a Native American in my class, one. And that was my big story. And everybody looked at me like I had 60 million heads. And now I know why. But I grew up in a province that never, ever educated us. So it's just awesome when I hear it from you. And it's just, I've been trying to learn as much on my own. But yeah, your content is awesome.
I don't think it's just you. I think our education system across all of Canada doesn't do a good enough in educating people of what happened to Indigenous people.
No,
And
they're
this
not.
was a purposeful thing. I think the boomer generation, the Gen X generation, even the millennial generation, there wasn't enough education surrounding Indigenous peoples when they want to make things comfortable for children in schools, right? So
Yeah, but I mean, I look back and I don't know. It frustrates me, but I honestly don't know how much it's. Hopefully, it's changed in my old province. I hope, but content creators like you are helping definitely.
well, there's lots of great content creators on Indigenous issues. The Beaver Network does an amazing job as well. There's a lot of great Indigenous creators on here that I'm very, very thankful for. And Calvin Stevens is really good. There's so many I can
Amazing.
mention. Yeah.
Okay, just saying thank you.
Thank you.
No, I'm sorry for my grade 7 self.
Don't be sorry.
It's probably good that you can make those connection pieces, right?
Yeah,
And it allows other people to kind of get comfortable in their own ignorance,
I hope.
because that's kind of the first part of it, is to stop getting offended and get over yourself, to listen to the information and learn.
Yeah, it's something I know it may sound so small, not small, but it's a memory that has never left me, that I said it. And the look on people's, like I said, the look on people's faces. And then I looked around and I was in a classroom that was half Indigenous. I'm like, what must I have looked like back then? So, yeah, I can understand how you're fighting, or educating, sorry, because it was definitely back then we didn't get enough.
Well, I'm in my 50s and I wasn't, I come from a very racist background. I'm not going to lie. Like, I wasn't allowed to play with Indigenous kids on the playground. I did, and I did whatever I wanted, but I always got in trouble for it later. And it was something that probably was never going to change about me, because, I mean,
No, I'm
I
not from
just,
a colony.
pardon me?
Someone's asking me in the comments if I'm from a colony. No,
Oh, that's an interesting.
I don't know what that means, to be honest. If it's the type of colony I'm thinking.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, now if I talk to my mom, she's so embarrassed that she had those thoughts. We talk a lot about generationally the things that she learned and where she learned it from and how that changed her. And she just only thinks about change now. And I think that's important.
That's
Yeah, me
great.
growing up too, when I was younger in my city. So in my city, we are directly connected to a reserve, an Indigenous reserve. Actually, we have 3 or 4 because I'm in Northern Ontario. So I live on Aboriginal land. And so we are surrounded by different reserves of different nations. And when I was growing up, number one, there was no education, zero, zilch, nothing about Indigenous people in school. Because back then I didn't have the internet. We didn't have access to anything. We had whatever textbook they had for the semester. That's what you learned. And if it wasn't in that textbook, you didn't learn it. And I know that the Catholic Church had everything to do with covering that up and keeping that as quiet as possible. And unfortunately, our government was complicit in that. I appreciate that they're taking steps to try to make amends. I think there's still a ways to go, but I can appreciate we're at least at the point where they're trying. But I was brought up my parents, my family, my friends, we couldn't play with the children because they were calling them dirty, that they made consistent jokes about welfare or horrible things. And I listened to people all around me all day long say these terrible things. And it never sat well with me, but it was just, everybody said it, right? So the one high school that we had was on the edge of the reserve, and that was the only high school where the Indigenous people went, and they called it the dirty high school. Like, it was just inherent so much in your daily life, and I think back to it, and it was just so disgusting. But as a kid, I didn't know any different. That's just what everybody did. And they did it openly and rudely right at the kitchen table in a restaurant, and nobody said a word about it. It was so awful. So for me to try to broaden my horizons and learn as much as possible, like I could never in my life say how sorry I am that those things happened to those people. I could never make amends with that. I want to try and spread the word and get educated and learn things. But growing up there, we had nothing.
That's what's
I've
so
had
special about this app. Sorry, I'll just be quick, Jazzy, and then I'll give it to you. For me, that's what's so special about this app is that education piece has been amazing. Like, so many strong Indigenous creators coming out and educating. You know, it's taught me and probably so many people, like, it filled in the gaps of what we didn't know, right? And I don't think a lot of people would have just taken a class, you know what I mean, and signed up for a class to learn this on their own. It wasn't until COVID, when people were locked in our homes, that these creators came out and started teaching and educating, and having an app like this to kind of hear these hard truths and reality and learn has been so important. I could have never articulated this properly. So I'm very appreciative. Thank you, Curiously, and many others like you.
Do you guys want to hear my story growing up?
Yes, please.
So I'm Métis, so one part of my family is Indigenous and the other part of my family isn't. And each summer I would get sent to the part of my family that isn't Indigenous, who lives right next to a reserve. And this family was very racist. And so I was always looked at as my mother's daughter. I wasn't accepted into this family. But because we lived next to this reserve and we'd have to go to town every week to do laundry, there would be Indigenous women there, the nicest aunties in the world. And they knew that my family that I was with was racist. So they would always take me when my grandma, who was supposed to be watching, they'd take me in while I was there and give me chocolate bars, and I'd get to play with their kids, and they were making sure that I had their good shoes and good coats to wear. This is what the Indigenous community is like, and it hurts. It's painful for me to hear that they have been painted in such a bad light when they have always been the most caring and kind people in my life. I didn't grow up on a reserve. I didn't get to be taught the teachings because my grandma came from a residential school and lost all contact from her family. So I don't know anything about my history. I don't know anything about being Cree. But yes, being on this app, I get to learn and connect to that community. And I am so proud of that heritage that I have. And I am thankful that so many people have been accepting of the Indigenous community and are taking more of an activist role in protecting them.
Jazzy, sorry I cut you off, and I know you wanted to share. Thank you,
No,
Curiously.
your story. I don't even know what I was going to say because your story just, wow.
It's beautiful.
I've had the pleasure of living in 4 different provinces in Canada, and yeah, none of them were any better. They were all pretty much the same. I just so glad you're out there doing what you're doing, and others like Calvin, because it needs to be done. It needs to be done. It needed to be done so long ago. but I'm doing my part in ensuring that my children are not ignorant to it, and that's how I feel I can add back somehow a little bit. It's never going to make up for it, ever.
I don't think it can make up for it. I'd really love to see, for me, when we start talking about changes in government and electoral reform, for me, it probably won't be good enough until I see more Indigenous representation within the government. And so when I say that, I'm looking to see, I don't know if it's going to be provincially an Indigenous counterpart for every province or something along that. But until we see things like that, I don't think, I think we need to be working towards that. That's when I feel like there's going to be more strength.
I believe there should be Indigenous councils in every form of government across this land. Like every provincial government should have an Indigenous council that it has every right and say in everything that goes through government.
So like if there's a premier in my mind, there would be a counter premier Indigenous.
Yeah.
So they'd have to work together.
Yeah, for the voices of the Indigenous people, I agree.
Yeah.
I saw something online today how people they're hoping that the king gives, I didn't realize this, again, I'm learning so much, that I guess when council, please correct me if my words are wrong, if I'm saying it wrong, that someone has to announce when they open Congress, oh my God, when they open cabinet, someone has to give a throne speech. Is that true?
Yeah.
If so, they are advocating for it to be King Charles. And I'm thinking, what? No, I just think that, wouldn't that be something that the governor, no, it shouldn't. I think it should be given to an Indigenous leader. But that's what they're asking for, which is crazy. They think it'll give more incentive for Trump to back off.
With the king there?
The king giving the speech, and maybe, I don't know. I can't see the king in a month making a trip.
I feel like it was even hard to get him to speak on behalf of Canadians. Like it was a real push to even voice for Canadians. I don't know if he would
And
do
we pay when he comes to visit?
I think we do.
Yeah, we do. We pay for all of his security and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. That's something personally I don't.
Well, I'd sure like to get the chief that wrote the cease and desist letter for Daniel Smith. He's the one that should be doing that.
Yeah. I like every treaty, like nations from all the treaties in Alberta, have stepped up and written their statements and petitioned for Daniel Smith to cease and desist with the bill 54.
I only got the one opportunity to read the one letter, but I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Well written.
Just kind of checking her and putting her in her place.
We have to. It's just ridiculous, the things that she's saying.
Right.
Well, I can't believe that she's trying to actually make it more difficult for Indigenous people to vote by making the ballot boxes further away. Like she's just, the woman needs to stop.
She knows how powerful they are. She fears this.
Absolutely.
And
she should, absolutely.
She's a government that has time after time not led any consultations with Indigenous people or made them very short. It's just very intentionally. If you ever hear her talk about, do you respect the Indigenous people of this country, she will just go and say, oh, I respect this, what was it, treaty, or was it Chartered Rates 35? Sorry, I'm using the wrong language right now, but that's the only kind of thing she'll say. She doesn't say much about making sure things are good for Indigenous people. She just says that she respects a certain part of them. The Indigenous people stand in all the things, like stand in the way of everything she wants. She wants to dig out the eastern slope. She wants to put in her AI supercenter with Kevin O'Leary in the north. They're standing in the way of her pipelines. Like, it's just, to her, Indigenous people are an obstacle, not something that she cares about.
Christine, any thoughts on that?
Um, Actually, I just jumped up here really quickly to bring up a point that I thought was really funny. It's not my point, it's not my original thought, but I just watched a video and I feel really bad because I cannot remember the woman's name that made the video, and I follow her, but she's awesome. She had received a comment saying, isn't like the fact that Pierre Poilievre might take a seat from someone else kind of DEI coded? And I thought, oh my God, that's right. Don't we want the person who's best for the job to have the job? And he wasn't best for the job. He didn't get the seat. And I just thought that was hilarious. I really did.
You know what else is hilarious? The fact that Stephen Harper is the head of the IDU, the program that is spearheading the globe in fascism. He's the guy in charge. He's making the decisions, and he couldn't get his own guy in his own country. Sleep well, Stephen Harper.
Oh, yeah, I knew he was running that organization. And it scares me because of how many people they've gotten into other nations and what's happened to the people that are unfortunate enough to live in those nations.
Don't you
And
find it funny that Pierre's going to Alberta and Danielle's pulling this crap in Alberta? Don't you think it kind of coincides with each other?
not surprised.
Considering he kicked
Well, I
her out
mean,
of Alberta for 2 weeks
he
prior to
couldn't.
the election.
Well, he couldn't get in, right? He wasn't the prime minister, so he couldn't use the withstanding clause. So all of a sudden, here comes Danielle with her new little order.
Yeah, you're right. Welcome, Tessa. How are you tonight?
Good.
So do we think maybe
Also,
this was Pierre's plan all along? To not even try to be PM, to just get Alberta to separate, and
No,
it's been
no,
this whole
no,
spiel
no,
all
no,
along?
no. What I'm saying is he couldn't become the PM, so he wasn't able to use the withstanding clause against the Indigenous. So here comes Danielle with a plan. Well, let's do this so that we can kind of shut them down so they have no say, basically, right?
Right. Yeah, oh yeah, no, I agree. But I'm just saying, like, maybe Pierre wants to run in Alberta to actually take over Alberta to actually try to separate into the United States and make that his whole shtick.
well,
I
that would
don't
only
think he
be
would do
backup
that.
for him. He wants to be in charge. He's a narcissist. He would rather be PM for sure.
These are
Yes.
all
And
the same calling cards also that happened in Ukraine before they went to war with the Ukraine, right? All of these things. The trying to take over the and separate, all of those types of things happened in the Ukraine. Sorry, just chiming in. I just wanted to say hi to Shauna. Welcome.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us.
I had just wanted to make a comment on, like, kind of going back to Alberta and talking about the Indigenous community. I'm Métis myself in Northern Ontario as well. And I just think where the clash, I think, happens is that Indigenous people, they're the caretakers of the land. And she just wants to wreck it. So that's why she wants to keep them away. I'm not saying that's the only reason, but it's another reason as to why she wants to keep them away from voting and not have as powerful of a voice as she feels they should have. Because they're the
That's
keepers of the
exactly
land. So
it.
they're going to tell her when she's being disrespectful and not support her. And as for Pierre, he's not going to get Alberta out of Canada either, because they're not going to listen to him either. So he can go do whatever he wants. He's not going to get his goals met over there, in my opinion.
I think he'd be shooting himself in the foot to run and take over someone's seat. Like, this is my opinion. I think he'd be shooting himself in the foot to take over a seat somewhere in Alberta because he already gets the support here. He'd have to go in Ontario somewhere again because he needs to get more of the support than just in Western provinces. In my opinion, I think he's going to take over a seat somewhere in Ontario if he stays on.
I think that his main objective right now is to obtain a seat so he can get his butt back in to Parliament, right?
Maybe
That's
you have to watch from the the viewing gallery. Is that right?
pardon me.
The
Yeah.
galley, yep.
Yeah, but he can't run that big mouth of his.
No.
It'll be
And,
so
and
quiet.
on top of all of this, the party keeps saying, "Oh, the taxpayers, we want to save you money and cut the taxes, and we care so much about how much you're taxed." But now they're calling for another election. That costs money
Okay, you know what kills
because they
me?
need it for him to get a seat.
You know what kills me? So this morning, I watched this comedian talking about the typical maple mega conservative, right? Driving a big pickup truck and you have a boat on the back because you're going fishing and you're doing all the stuff, right? So then I thought, okay, that's kind of funny, haha. And then later this afternoon, I actually went to, there was a live going on and I'm at work and I'm just listening in my headphones. And there's a live of a bunch of people in Alberta, these women that are all in this live in Alberta. And the one's got her camera facing forward and they're like, "Oh, what are you up to?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm sitting in my sunroom with my propane fireplace having a dart and whatever." And the other girl's like, "Oh yeah, that's great, we're gonna go out to the cottage this weekend." And then the other one says, "Well, something to do about dog food," and it had to do with the fact that they could only have pure lamb or pure chicken for their dog. If you're coming to me telling me that you're tax poor, maybe it's a spending problem, not a liberal problem. Like, don't tell me I don't care about my fellow Canadians when your payments are so high for all your stuff that the liberals are your problem. I think you have bigger problems than the liberals.
Every Canadian pays the same federal tax.
Exactly.
In Alberta, the provincial tax on their paychecks are 10 to 15%. In Ontario, it's 5.06 cents to $13.16 or percentage. So they're taxed higher on their provincial tax for their paychecks. And they're looking at the federal government. Well, hey, buddy, I pay the same damn tax in Ontario that you're paying in Alberta on my federal paychecks.
You know what's funny? When they had the big oil field layoff in Alberta, literally all over the news and on social media, do you know how many whiners there was? Because they were losing their houses, they're losing their trailers, they're losing their jacked up trucks and their Sea-Doos. They're not being able to afford all these things, and right away, the Conservative government just goes, it's the federal government's fault. And they still, to this day, think that's what it is.
And Alberta's its own like echo chamber, right? Like my husband used to be a well site geologist on the rig. And I get when they so for example, a well site geologist, he made very good money, but we had to pay our own taxes. So that hurt a lot at the end of the year to pay such a large sum. And with the oil and gas rigs, it's feast or famine. Right? So you can work a while and then there's no work and you dry up. So that extra amount of money you're making, sometimes you can buy a boat, but there's a lot of times where you can't buy those things because you need that money to kind of carry it over. I'm not asking people to feel sorry for anybody for any reason, but it gets you into this vicious cycle is what I noticed, where we were constantly waiting for these checks to come in and was everything going to work out? No, finally the checks are in, everything's okay. Oh, now there's no work. Oh, maybe and the push is pushing us on the rig because he doesn't like my car, my husband's junky car. He wants him to get a big rig because it represents the drilling rig and you get paid enough, so you better be buying a big truck like all the other guys that have big trucks. You got to buy the program, you got to do all these things. So when you make a lot of money, you spend a lot of money.
That's right, but that's everywhere too.
It is, but it gets you in that cycle. So to stop that cycle, you have to go through a lot of pain. And trust me, I went through that where we were like, you know what? We don't like how the oil rigs are going. We don't like what they're doing to the environment. We don't want to be responsible from this. we don't like this. We don't want to be in this cycle. But it took us 4 years of pain, 5, almost 7, to get to a space where we could recover from that. And I think a lot of people are just stuck in that vicious circle. And then there's the Alberta echo chamber in there.
Well,
And
the
it's really
young
sad
kids go
that.
into it.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, the young kids go into the oil field right away thinking, oh man, I'm going to make so much money doing this. I'm going to afford to buy a house, which they're complaining about right now because they can't afford to buy a house. So they think it's a quick, easy way to become rich. But they're not taught that working in the trades is all about boom and bust, and it's reliant on markets. They think it's the federal government. And that's what the issue is. So then that's why these people are trained to vote conservative and working
And
against.
I would go even further. It's a shame because in actual fact, it really doesn't matter what you do for a living. We should be, thankfully my parents taught me this, but it should be very common knowledge, if not taught at school, that the very minimum amount that, if possible, because it's not always possible, to put away from each check should be about 10%, because you don't know what your future holds. I was making good money. I didn't have any dependents. I traveled a lot. I had nice things. And then I had a spinal cord injury. So I don't make, I don't make any money. I get back the money I paid into the government in case something like this happened, but it's just over $800 a month.
Yeah, that's me too. I'm disabled, and mine just a little over 800 a month, and we're raising 2 grandkids, and we're struggling too. I think a lot of Canadians are struggling. A lot of people across the world are struggling. The pandemic crushed a lot of business and economy, and I mean, you can point as many fingers as you want at the government, but it was a pandemic. It was an actual, viral disease that was killing people. So they had to do something. And I think that that's what killed a lot of the economy right now. You can't blame liberals for it. It's ridiculous.
I think so. Just to Christine's point, I think going into it, ideally you want to put 10%, but aside for it, I think in our particular situation, my son was diagnosed with autism, and I had to start working right away. So I look at people, and I think everybody has a different circumstance. I think a lot of people would probably just off the bat just want to pay those things off, right? But circumstances don't always allow those things, right?
And that's why I said, when I said it, if possible.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I totally understand that it's not always possible. Even when I was working and tried to follow that, I couldn't always do that. Like, I understand.
Yeah, it's a challenging thing, and I'm not saying it for people to feel sorry for all the oil and gas people. I just think it's just, to me, as I sit back and I'm watching a friend go through this now, and what I'm seeing is it's very cyclical, right? It's very cycled and cyclical, and it's a struggle. When you want to leave, you can't. It's almost like joining the mafia or something like that. You're stuck.
Are you comparing it to like owning your soul to the company store kind of thing?
Yeah, I think I kind of am. I remember when my husband went out there, I had an old Subaru that my stepmom used to drive up when she was a well site geologist. So I'm like, well, if it worked for her, it'll work for us. We'll do it. And I remember the driller pulling my husband aside to push and saying, you can't drive something like that. And my husband was like, why? It works. And he was like, no, that's not a good look. You're going to have to get a truck.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that that term, owe your soul to the company store. It's like in boom towns, when there was one particular trade going on, like mining or whatever it was, the company would come in, build temporary housing, own all the stores, and pay you just enough that you could go to their store, buy food from that store, and just make your rent. And it's continuing to this day. We see it even in Walmart's practices. They move into towns, they shut down all the mom and pop stores, right? Because they can't, their prices can't be beat because they can buy in such bulk numbers. And then people in that town, not everyone, but start working at that store because they can't work at the old hardware store run by Mick anymore, and they get paid just enough that they could rent a place and buy food from that very store that underpays them, and not just underpays them, but they go out of their way to, in the States anyway, to instruct their employees on how to apply for things like SNAP, not because they care about their employees having enough, obviously, because they don't pay them enough. But if their employees get benefits from the government, well, guess what? They can take their SNAP to the Walmart store now and use SNAP at the Walmart store. And
What does SNAP
Walmart gets
mean,
it.
Christine?
Yeah?
What does SNAP mean?
Oh, it's the new term for basically food stamps,
Okay,
food
cool.
stamps. And everyone has this misconception in the States that everyone on SNAP is unemployed, but the vast majority, I think it's well into the 80 percentile, are working class poor. And that's not a dig when I use the words poor or working class or whatever. That is not a dig at all. That's just those words are used to represent where they're at right now.
Just for reference, where are you from, Christine?
I'm from Ontario.
Okay.
I had my second live today. I've got to have 3 of them to allow requests and people to comment. I can't wait.
Welcome to the shit show.
But I love the people in the Beaver Network. I actually asked people on my live today to join you guys and check you out.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. They're creators all across Canada, and everybody's working really hard just to get the truth and information and have good political discourse and conversation over it.
And dispel the myths and the lies, because politicians will always lie, but recently they're lying big. And I see why, because if you look at history, you can get a clear understanding of why people are doing things they are now. And there was a man named Goebbels, who I'm sure you know who that is, that came up with a list of 11 things. He was the minister of propaganda in Germany in the 1930s and 40s. And one of the things is to lie, but not just to lie, but to lie big. And the goal there to lie big and lie often is that us as normal people, and generally we're nice people, and we'll tell white lies. Like if someone says, "How you doing?" I'll say fine when I'm not. But we won't go around and spread massive misinformation. And so we think when we hear something, well, that sounds awful, but there's no way they'd say that if it weren't true. And it's just human nature to stop there and accept it. But that's not what's going on. They're lying big and lying often because it was a useful tool in the past, and it's becoming useful now. I mean, just look at what was happening in the States for their elections, during our elections.
Well, and that's why we came up with the Beaver Network in itself, is because, I mean, in no time in my life, 5 years or 10 years before this, did I think that I would be sitting on a live with Frontline and we would be giving people information and facts, and this is what we would be doing right now. No time did I ever think that that would be what I would doing. I don't think Frontline thought that, or any of the other people on this Beaver Network. But we're constantly faced with misinformation that I was just desperate. And I think everybody else on this panel and out in this community was desperate to try to get some good dialogue out there and some good conversation around the truth and on lies.
And
It's
I
a,
think Frontline will remember from, I think, yesterday's live. I originally came to TikTok because I like watching the WNBA. And now I'm here too. So, like, I totally get you.
Frontline,
I
why
think
did you come to TikTok?
Me? I've been on TikTok for a long time, but I've gone through many accounts, so I'm always here for the same reason. Politics.
Well, you're one of the unique ones, I think. And one of the big lies that I was even told today by, to get by, I rent 2 rooms in my house because I don't get very much from CPP. And my army buddy who's renting here came up to give me the rent, and we were chatting about the election, and we were talking about it. And I said, well, there's good things and bad things. I'm glad Carney's here. It's too bad it wasn't a majority government, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah, but did you hear about what Carney did in the UK and, bankrupting their bank? And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Excuse me? And then, it gets worse. Then I heard, he said, yeah, it was a former premier of the UK that said it. And I was like, okay, tell me the name. And I got her name, and I looked
I
it
know
up.
who it is.
Yeah, but I just want to tell the people in the chat. So she was in the least amount of time, under 50 days.
48 days. 48
Yeah.
I thought it was
days.
49.
Yeah, she pushed forward a budget that was so skewed in helping the ultra rich that it basically started a crash. And the British pound was losing strength, so much so that the government had to basically take tax dollars and buy a bunch of bonds just to stabilize. So she blames that on him, but we forget, not only does she blame it on him, but he wasn't even the head of the bank at that time. He had not been there for at least a year, if not 2. But the gall of her, who actually caused the problem, to say that to a journalist, to try and interfere with our government elections, and the gall of that journalist not to fact check. And that comes back to the whole tell a big lie.
When
And the thing is, sorry, go ahead, Tess. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I never
It's
said
about to get
nothing.
worse. I'm sure some of you guys follow Path to Where. He just did a video about one of the graphs that all the right-wing people like to use for, I believe it was GDP or something like that. And that graph that they got was actually from the Toronto Star, which, as we all know, is owned by the US media. But people reading the Toronto Star would believe what they see. That's a pretty, for people who don't know, that's a pretty reputable news source. And unfortunately, no one fact checks this. And even if they do, and you hold them to account, all they got to do is put a little disclaimer on page 4 at the bottom, and they've legally done what they needed to do, but no one's actually going to call them out on that false information. And so I never looked up graphs and charts and double checked them, but I'm going to have to learn how to start doing that now, because if the Toronto Star's doing it.
And it's not just the Star.
I think it was the Star. I think it was Toronto Sun that did that.
Oh, was it?
But regardless, that's now taken by everyone on the internet and repost it. And it's just snowballs.
That's not new though. They've been doing this for the last 4 years straight. Like, this is a tactic that they've been using for a long time. Fake AI photos, fake comments, fake documents, fake letters. Like, it's unfortunate, but this is not something new. This has been going on for a long time.
Just look at the interview with Trump the other day. It doesn't even have to be very convincing for some people. There was a photograph of the gentleman that was sent to, I believe, El Salvador, wrongfully so, because the government said he was a part of MS-13. And in the photograph of his fist, he has tattoos on his knuckles. There's a pea leaf. I think there's a picture of an animal and some others. And in the photo that was given to Trump, they had superimposed, not on the knuckles themselves, but above the knuckles, just the letters and numbers, MS-13. So I guess as aid to him to say, oh, these actually represent those things.
They're saying that was tattooed on him, and they were very much added on in Microsoft freaking Paint. It's ridiculous. Anybody who says that photo is real is.
Well, Trump tried to say it with that reporter, Terry, I believe it was.
No, I know, but he obviously doesn't believe it. I don't even think the MAGA Republicans can look at that photo and not realize that the words MS-13 were added in Microsoft Paint.
But
they're just blindly supporting anything.
Let me just finish quickly. Sorry. He's not even looking at the one I think you're talking about where they erased the actual tats and put the tats over the knuckles. He was looking at a photo that literally had them hovering in the air above the man's fists and thought that was evidence that they were on his knuckles. It was so bad.
What they were saying about that is they put that above the tattoos because what they were trying to tell people is that tattoo represented M or represented whatever it was. But a lot of people didn't, because the way the news was presenting it was in various ways that would confuse people.
No, I
and how they
understand
were presenting.
that.
Yeah.
But he
for other people that
literally
might not understand that, but
no, and he literally looked at that photo where it was supposed to be like a guide to what those tattoos they were saying represented. He looked at that same photograph where they were hovering above his knuckles as if to indicate what the pictures represented, and still was adamant when being interviewed by the journalist that they were actually on his knuckles and there were no pictures but just the letters and numbers. That was crazy. But the craziest part of that interview was when the journalist said to him, let's just agree to disagree and move to the next point. And then Trump said, you should just say yes.
Yeah. I've seen that one.
yeah, I saw that. He took him to task really well, though. I thought that journalist.
Good.
Graph on him at the time and walked him through it like he was a teacher and Trump was in kindergarten, and like pointed out like, this is a letter, this is a number, these are knuckles. Those letters and numbers are above the knuckles, therefore they cannot be on his hand, you know? But the fact that he told a journalist that the journalist should just say yes is really scary.
What's really scary is the fact that he's now basically given the police full reign to do whatever they want with no legal ramifications if they screw up or unalive you by mistake. He pretty much gave all police forces that ability, and that they will not be prosecuted by the government.
Oh, I just seen one of the, I just seen one of the representatives come on a TikTok. I can't even remember his name, but he had just come out of one of their little Congress meetings or whatever, and he was stating that the Republicans were voting yes to deporting American citizens.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah,
That's
they are. That's a thing.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, sorry.
No, you go ahead too. But I'm just like, yeah, that was a thing. They voted on it, and they voted
Yeah.
100% for it.
He said, but none of them were going to vote.
They did. They all voted for it.
Not the Democrats.
Oh, not the Democrats, but it was passed.
Yeah, just the Republicans. But the audacity.
It's pretty much everything that all of us have been warning about for a long time. Shauna, is that you folding? I'm just gonna mute you just for that.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. And then you can just pop in when you want to talk again, okay?
And
Yeah.
during
Can I add one thing just real quick? Sorry, because this is important. The tattoos, that even in that picture, we don't actually know if that's actually his hand or not, because the tattoos also did not appear in a family photo of Garcia that was shared by immigration advocates. And also MS-13 experts told many different journalistic media sources that none of the pictorial tattoos in the photograph is a known signifier of MS-13. So there's a lot of pieces that don't add up. We genuinely don't even know if that picture is his actual hand or not. Just putting it out there.
And I'm not implying that in any way he is or he is not a part of MS-13.
I wasn't saying that you were making any implication. I wasn't even directly speaking to you. I just wanted to let people know that are here that there's also some more nuance to this story, that they shouldn't just take that one photo that's being shared around as the ultimate truth, and they should read into the full facts that, like, we still don't actually know, because it didn't appear in family. Those actual tattoos, not even just the letters, but the tattoos themselves didn't appear in certain family photos that were given by immigration services, and that the experts that study this gang have said that if that was the case and those were his knuckle tattoos, that does not signify any connection to MS-13.
And I wasn't thinking you were directing that at me. What I was going to further say was that let's just give it the benefit of the doubt. Let's just say they did for some reason, which they have been proven not to be if they were, in fact, even on his hand. But even if they were in some way a gang-affiliated tattoo, everyone is entitled to due process. And when that journalist brought that up to Trump, that no, he's allowed due process, which would have actually put an end to this discussion, because he would have had a hearing and we would know for sure. And that's the purpose of due process. He's like, no, we're not going to pay for a whole court case. And he's like, no, there's a difference between a court case and due process, which is just another scary example of how the leader of that country doesn't know the difference and doesn't know that people, or doesn't care that people are allowed due process. And did you see his face when the journalist said to him, well, you're the most powerful man, in the country, and you're thinking, oh, he's going to love this, right? Trump loves being called powerful. He's like, well, just pick up that phone right there and you can call and have him sent back right now. And he was so torn because he loves being called powerful, but he doesn't like being told that he had made a mistake. And he'd rather die on that hill than admit to the mistake and get someone back from a place that is
He's been raised
historically known for torture and unaliving.
Right.
He was trained, though, to be this way, because I'm a psychotherapist. I've been a psychotherapist for over 30 years. And he was in a cult, and he has formed his own cult, and he is honestly brainwashing people. So all these people that follow him, when people are joking that they're in a cult, it's not a joke. They are in a cult, and they believe what he is saying, and they will follow him. And that's why when they're being interviewed by whoever, and the interviewer is saying, well, no, that's not correct, and challenges them, instead of saying, oh, let me think about that or something, they just go on to the next point. But it's because they still believe what they believe. And it's scary that the cult is so huge in the United States. I'm not saying Canada doesn't necessarily have one going on as
Oh,
well.
yes. Has that
But
in
I would
Alberta?
say that the States is huge. Yes, it's exactly.
Has
And it's
But in the
anybody
growing.
watched
States, he
American
is a
Horror?
cult
How does
leader.
Alberta have a cult? I'm just
Has
curious.
anybody watched American Horror?
Yes. Yeah.
Season 7, there's the cult. And it has
Yeah.
its own little, and it literally lays out everything that's happened into the United States and what's rolling into Canada really easily. How to get a cult, the kind of personality, the things you need to do, the things that you need to
Yeah.
do to get those people to align with you. And like after watching that, I was like, I just like shivers.
You know,
Yeah,
And not to make light of the cult thing, because it's definitely a cult. There's one in Canada and it's growing, and that scares the pants off me. But just on a lighter note, what's the difference between Jamestown cult and Trump's cult?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Their
Nope,
location.
nope.
The outcome. The
Trump,
outcome.
Trump will charge you for the Kool-Aid.
Oh, that's a good one.
For sure. For sure he would.
I like that. Yeah. He manipulates every day. He uses coercion every day. He, like, just what he was doing with that interviewer was the same thing. He was trying to get him manipulated as well. But that guy's strong enough to say no. Kind of like how, is it Jon Stewart? I just love watching him when he rips apart
Oh, I love
Trump.
John.
He's so good.
I'd love to get a few more people part of the conversation. I noticed WPX, sorry, UPW
Sure.
popped back up. Hello,
Are
how
we
are
going to
you?
talk about Canadian politics though, or are we just going to talk about Trump?
We're gonna
Drop me
talk
down.
all over. It's my life. We get to pick.
For sure.
You
Okay.
can drop me down if you need the space.
He's here. He's got a space. You're good.
I was just curious if we're going to talk about Canadian politics, but if you guys want to talk about Trump, that's cool as well.
That's the topic right now. Curious Leaf, how you doing?
Good, I'm just listening. I know that he brought up, how does Alberta have a cult? Have you heard of the Maverick Party or the Republican Party
Yes.
of Alberta?
Yeah.
What do you know about them?
Well,
How
I
about
lived
the
in Alberta.
Freedom Convoy?
I lived in Alberta for quite a while, and the Maverick Party have been pushing this for many years. This isn't a new thing. They've been doing this for quite a while, and it's a disappointment that they're taking such an American approach.
Party, the one that wants to separate and make Canada into the 51st state, is it that one?
There's two of them, the Maverick Party and the Republican Party of Alberta.
For
They're
sure. So
both
how are
far
they cults though?
What
They,
was it?
they,
Really?
they may have like intense beliefs. They may not agree. But how are they cults?
Because
Look
they
up the
can't
definition.
disagree with their leader.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I don't know anything about them. I was just curious how they are cults. If they can't disagree with their leader, then I would agree that's a cult. Sure. I wouldn't say it's like they're gonna go. I wouldn't say it's like some crazy cult, but yeah, it's weird that you can't disagree with your leader. I agree.
They can't disagree with their leader, and their leader gives them a line, and whether it's true or not, they're going to carry that line.
Yeah, I
I'll
agree.
give you another example if you like.
Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead, Frontline. She hasn't had much of a chance to talk. Go ahead, Frontline.
The common characteristics of cults are number one, charismatic leader. So cults are often led by a charismatic individual who is seen as infallible and a source of truth and validation. This is very obvious for the MAGA Republicans, but it probably also works for these smaller cults in Alberta. Number two, absolute authoritarianism. The leader wields complete control, often without accountability, demanding obedience, and suppressing dissent. Number three, isolation and control. Cults often isolate members from outside influences, family, and friends to maintain control and reinforce group cohesion. Number four, unquestionable faith. Members are expected to unquestionably accept the leader's beliefs and teachings without questioning or doubt. Number five, manipulation and exploitation. Cults employ various manipulative tactics, including love bombing, to recruit and control members and may exploit them financially, emotionally, or physically. Number six, dishonoring the family unit. They often prioritize the group's needs over family and friend relationships, leading to sustained or severed ties with family members. Number seven, identity change. So cults may attempt to reshape a member's identity, often leading to a sense of dependency on the group and a diminished sense of self. Number eight, us versus them mentality. Cults frequently create a strong sense of us versus them, fostering a perception of the outside world as a threat or evil. Number nine, mind-altering practices. Some cults utilize mind-altering techniques such as slogans, repetitive work in order to suppress doubts and maintain control. And finally, the last one is inordinate zeal. So members display an excessively zealous and unquestioning commitment to the leader and the group's beliefs.
Nailed it.
Differ from other organizations, like for example, like, and obviously I'm not saying the military is like this. I love the military, but how does that differ from, for example, a military in many different ways? Because like militaries also, value the military, the military is the main value. I'm not seeing like how these
Can I answer?
attributes make them cultish.
I'm ex-military. Can I answer that?
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to hear it. I'm not saying
when
military is
I
a cult. I'm not saying that, by the way.
no, I know you're not. When I joined the military, I swore an oath, and that oath was only to follow a command that was a lawful command. So I still had the autonomy. If someone said, you're going to go hit that other person in the head, I'd be like, no, that's not a lawful command. If we were somewhere in a conflict and they said, for instance, if you're in a conflict, you have certain rules of law within our own military and the Geneva Convention. If someone told me to break those, I would just say no. I can't do that. And then also, there has been an incidents back in the early 90s where 2 people were actually prosecuted, should have been more, for breaking those rules. Matchy and Brown, Private Brown and Master Corporal Matchy were both prosecuted because they broke the Geneva Convention and unalived someone. And prior to that, were very, very cruel physically and mentally to that person. So you can't do evil things just because you're told to or because you want to.
Can I just add something?
Makes a lot of sense. And I wasn't saying the military is evil. I love the military. I think the military is a great organization. And I wasn't saying it was a cult at all. All I was saying was that group mentality. Even sports teams have that. That group.
Well, you just asked what the difference was, so she explained it.
For sure. And I was using it as a comparison. I wasn't saying it was a cult. I
gave a lot more I gave a lot more characteristics than just group mentality. Group mentality is a small part of it, and it does not apply to all cults. You need all of the characteristics to be able to say that you're in a cult. The military, for example, doesn't have an us versus them mentality. They're just in the military, right? And even sports teams, like sports teams, for example, right? Like you have a Leafs fan and an Oilers fan. Most of the time, they can still get along. They can still be friends. They can still be part of the same family. They might go against each other during a game, but they don't alienate themselves away from their families because, for example, I'm an Oilers fan and my family cheers on for the Leafs, so that means I'm never going to talk to them again, right? There is a big difference there between group mentality and cults.
For sure. I would say the Liberal Party has the us versus them mentality. If you look at the attack ad they put against Pierre, for example.
Well, how is that? Because I just saw, and I think many Canadians in Canada saw how the Liberal Party wasn't happy with their leadership. They asked their leadership to step down, and the leadership was changed out. Right? So when you're saying it's a cult mentality,
I'm not saying
the leadership would never be changed out.
For sure. I'm not saying it's a cult. I'm just trying to say the definition. And I wasn't saying the military is a cult either. It's obviously not a cult. And neither is the Liberal Party, obviously. All I'm trying to say is that the definition you're using as a cult and trying to apply it to other parties doesn't seem adequate to me. I'm not saying it's the Liberal Party or saying that the military
but there is a big difference between the Liberal Party, who is able to hold their leaders accountable, question things, and also we're the ones that have been making so much effort over the last couple of years to try and have conversations with conservatives. We've tried to get along. We've tried to find the middle ground. We're the ones that are like, if we were truly a cult and us versus them, knowing that you're conservative, we wouldn't have even let you up here to talk to us, or we would have been insulting and berating you when realistically we're just trying to talk about facts and having a civil conversation with each other. But there's a lot of conservatives, and not all of them, right? Because that's what we were saying earlier. Not all conservatives are part of like the the Maple MAGA cult. Some conservatives are good people that we can have conversations with and just agree to disagree, and that's completely fine. But there's some that will not question their leaders. There's some that will listen to anything their leader says and take it as the word of God without looking at any information or doing any research into it. There's people that will only take their news from X or Rebel Media or the Toronto Sun without ever checking other sources. Most liberals, we actually read what's being wrote in Rebel Media and the Toronto Sun, and we try to take information from everywhere before we make a decision about what's true and what's not. So I don't think that, liberals are necessarily us versus them. I think we just try to point out the issues and the lies and the manipulation that we've seen coming from the Conservative Party leaders, and we try to get conservatives to question their own leaders. But I would say that Maple Megas are a lot more about us versus them, because they're literally now saying, oh, we didn't win the election, therefore we want to separate. Like, that is more of a cult mentality than you wouldn't see liberals do that. None of us. Like, I can guarantee you that if, say, Ontario or Quebec went like fully liberal but still lost the election and conservatives won across the board, they wouldn't be like, oh, now we need to separate. No, we'd be like, wow, this is shitty for us, but let's try to figure out a way to survive and be united with each other, even if this is our government. We would just be working even harder to push for truth and hold people accountable, but none of us would go, oh, let's separate.
And
on to that, I didn't call anyone a cult. I'm not saying the liberals are a cult. I'm just trying to compare.
No, you just asked what the difference is, right? And so that's what we're having this conversation.
For sure. And for sure. I'm just making it clear that I'm not calling these political parties a cult.
Yeah.
On that Maple Mega thing, so, and you're just saying how if the liberals won, they'd never want to separate. But at the same time, in the U.S., I think it's the last election, the conservatives have won a long time in Canada. But when the Republicans won in the United States, I saw many jokes about, I'm going to move to the U.S. or California should join Canada. So I feel like that's kind of the same language used as.
Hold on.
Hold on. That was fair.
Seeking sovereignty is different than separating from a country. They literally have an authoritarian leader in the United States jeopardizing their personal safety. How do conservative Albertans feel like their safety in their own province is being jeopardized?
Exactly. Oh yeah, and I again, this is extremist talk. But the thing is that it's a very, 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 very small amount of conservatives who feel that way. Very small.
we hope so. And I'm glad that you came up here and felt comfortable enough to discuss this. And I hope that you don't feel that we're trying to attack you in any way. And I never took you for someone who was saying that my former job was a cult. I just tried to tell you the difference. And if you look at the Liberal Party and think, cult, just remember that the leader of the Liberal Party used to be Justin Trudeau. And in a true cult, the leader doesn't step down, right?
For
But
sure,
he
and I don't
could.
think it's a cult. And,
No,
and
but you asked the question, right? So people are having this conversation.
Sure. I don't think it's a cult. I was just trying to say that I felt the definition you're using as a cult wasn't adequate, and I was just trying to say that how it was like not a good definition by comparing between things opposite and not cults. But on that maple thing,
I think
are you talking
Frontline
about
would like
Pierre
to finish her
Poilievre?
thought that she was trying to articulate with you.
I was going to say the beginning of the cult conversation actually came more so from talking about the American MAGAs more than anything. So that's where it originally came from when we were talking about cults. We were talking about the MAGA Republicans who are willing to listen to anything that Trump says and never question it, even though a lot of people's lives are now in danger. A lot of people have been disappeared. A lot of legal citizens have been deported, even though they were legal citizens with no due process. The House just passed a bill that lets U.S. citizens get freaking deported with no due process. Like, they are under full-blown authoritarian rule. And now we're also finding out that Doge has been collecting personal information on everybody so they can literally go after people that don't agree with the regime. it is an authoritarian dictatorship, and it's even scarier than Germany's 1930s authoritarian dictatorship, because now they have technology that Mustache Man never had.
And look how fast they've done it.
You seriously think you think Hitler is less bad than Trump? You know, Hitler killed like 6 million Jews, so I wouldn't say.
No, they're equal right now.
Hold on. Well, you first of all, unaliving, and hold on. Do you know how long that took? Like, do you understand how long Mustache Man's regime went on for? Do you know how long it was? When did he come into power, and when was the end of World War II?
I'm not completely sure. I think it was. I think he came into power in 1935, and they came out of.
Nope.
Oh, okay. All right. Then tell me, please.
1933 to 1945.
Yeah, he didn't even start building his concentration camps until about 3 to 4 years in. And he didn't start schmurdering people right away. At first, he was just putting people in camps and using them for free labor. Just so you know, there's a lot of history there. And for anybody who understands the history, we see the similarities. Because in the first 100 days of Mustache Man, he did not schmurder those 6 million Jews. Well, you do realize that Trump was already in power and it didn't do anything in the other 4 years in regards to schmurdering, like minorities.
That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean anything. He didn't do any of the extreme stuff that he's doing right now in the last 4 years. He's aligned with different organizations. He's aligned with different billionaires. He's aligned with different projects.
Let's take a look at
He has nothing to lose this time. He has nothing to lose this time because there's no third term. So people should be leery of him because he'll go all the way to keep it. He's that mentally unwell.
He's trying to make a third.
He's not a
term,
well
where he's
person.
selling merch.
Look at he's this scary. Jeff Bezos came out with Amazon, said they were going to start showing the tariff fees. Trump and him had a conversation and Bezos pulled it right back. And he's a billionaire. Why is he afraid of Trump?
Because he doesn't want to fall out of a window.
Okay, so who's been killed by Trump then? Or sorry.
Well, we don't know.
You really need to stop saying that.
If you keep talking like that, I will drop you.
Sorry. Unalive.
Thank you. We don't know all of those people. We don't know. We just know he's in close contact with the Russians and he does whatever Putin tells him to do. And we know that people that disappoint Putin fall out of windows or get poisoned or they disappear.
Okay, so first of all, people from the US have been disappeared. We don't know what's going on with them. Second of all, it's not just people from the US. When Elon Musk and Doge cut US aid, that cut food and medicine for people that needed it to survive. How many of them have been unalived by the fact that they are not receiving the help that they used to get? That is also something that we need to take into account. We're not going to have a lot of these numbers, probably not yet, probably not for a while, but we know that it's happening and things are only going to get more brutal. Do you understand what happens at CCOT? Do you know how many inmates disappear from CCOT all the time?
Yeah.
Like, please get educated on that.
I'm not trying to defend Trump. I'm just saying he's not as bad as Mustache Man.
Just let Curious Lee finish now.
Yet.
A Haitian woman just died a Haitian woman was just unalived in an immigration detention center waiting because they barely get fed or given water.
Can I give a direct correlation that might help him understand?
Sure.
Remember, this is something that takes time. And back in the day in Germany, the first group of people they went after were those with mental and physical disabilities, okay? And how did they do that? They didn't just scoop them up at first, right? They took it step by step. First, they started spreading things to dehumanize them. They're worthless, they can't work, their genetics are horrible, and so on, until they convinced people we should put them in homes. And once they were put in these institutions, from that step, it went to the complete unaliving of them. Now we look at today and we look at the States. And it was RFK goes on national television and starts the dehumanization phase.
Oh, Christine,
When
you're
he
going to get me all
starts,
hyped up over this one, boy.
All right.
he
Oh, man,
starts
this makes me mad.
discussing people that are mentally and physically disabled as people that will, and he doesn't use the word people, but as a burden. They will never work. They will never pay taxes. They're a burden. So they're doing it step by step. There's a playbook and a reason
local
why the
demon,
Germans,
local,
I'm going to land the plane. And there's a reason why a lot of good Germans were bamboozled, because they do it slow. They do it step by step, slowly. And at first you're like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Yeah, what? Yeah. But then boom, the hammer after 10 years is done and people are gone, man.
it's called eugenics.
Yep.
Support Trump. I don't really feel like having this conversation because I don't support him. Like I'm not a Trump supporter. I all I was trying to say is that
So
he's
who
not
do
going to
you
go
support?
unalive.
Let's let
You
him.
came
Let's let
out
him
with a
finish.
lot of.
Yeah, because I can't really talk when you're.
Well, who
Sorry.
do you support?
My personal beliefs. I support Pierre Poilievre or the Conservative Party of Canada.
Then you support Trump.
How?
They're one and the same.
Sure.
What about his policies did you like?
Oh, what about Pierre Poilievre's policies that I like? Well,
Yeah.
the main thing that I liked was that he wanted to expand our resource use. Like, for example, we have tons of resources in Northern Ontario that's just been stuck behind approval processes. Like, Canada has the second worst approval processes in the OECD for getting things approved. It takes 15 years to get things like mines approved. Well, I thought that was ridiculous, and I thought that that's something needs to move quicker. Pierre Poilievre promised solutions on that, like pre-approved zones for getting resources mined, called shovel-ready zones. Things like that I thought made a lot of sense because for example, investments down in Canada. I'll pull up the exact statistic, so I'm not spreading misinformation. Sorry, I need to get the exact number.
Don't be sorry.
Can I say something to that?
The number. Sorry, could I just say the number first, just so I can.
Let him
Definitely.
finish.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Before the Liberals, foreign direct investment in 2013 was 72 billion. Now it's around 40 billion. So just from all these extra, in my personal
And what's your
opinion.
source?
My source. Guys, 1 second. Okay. You have to find it. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know the exact source. I got it from a video. They had a massive amount of source in the paste bin in the bottom, so I didn't go through every single source. I sourced the video, but I didn't source the source was from a 2 and 20, so it was a political commentary news challenge. Now they had a large paste bin of sources in the bottom, so you could look in that paste bin for the sources, but I didn't get the exact source, unfortunately. But that statistic is true. That foreign investment in Canada, or FDI, is down many billions of dollars, and in my opinion, it's due to economic policies. Now, my source.
Did it have anything to do with the fact that we put a cap on in foreign investment on housing?
I'm not sure it may, but I think
I want to know what you mean by foreign investment into what sector.
The number is just foreign investment. It's foreign direct.
Well, then, how can you correlate that to mining?
Well, because all I'm saying is that if it takes such a long time to get something approved,
It doesn't take that. The median timeline is 4 years.
I have other sources saying it was 15.
In some instances, it might take longer because of the Indigenous affairs, the environmental impact studies, the way of getting there, getting foreign investment involved, the cost of the thing. Like, there's things that happen. It's not just like, hey, here, sign a piece of paper, it's done, you can start digging up the land. I worked in infrastructure for 9 years. For 9 years.
But
I know lots about this stuff.
We have the second worst approval ratings. Like times to get approvals. Like, for example, that project I was talking about has it's called the Ring of Fire in the.
Yeah, I know about the Ring of Fire.
Yeah, and it's been sitting on a bureaucrat's desk waiting to get approved for around 5 years. So
Who owns that land currently?
actually, the First Nation groups around that support it. There's 2 First Nation groups around that support it. So if you're trying to use the First Nations argument, that's not valid.
So look into why it's taken so long.
For sure, but to the First Nations groups around it support it because like that's not this is sorry. You guys asked why I voted for that party.
No, we just asked who you supported. We didn't ask why. We just asked who.
But yeah, you said your policies was so he would push for faster projects, so getting pipelines built for digging up resources. Like you liked that policy.
Yep.
Mark Carney came out and said that he wants to streamline it as well. But what Pierre Poilievre wanted was to make it more impossible for Indigenous to have a seat at the table. He wanted to cut the bureaucratic process. He wants to cut the red tape, and he just wants to punch through the land. I read his policy declaration. I went through his plan. I compared it to the Liberal. By the way, I'm not Liberal. I compared both of them. I have to deal with a lot of Indigenous stuff. I have to deal with working in infrastructure. I know how things work. And I can tell you, hundreds of pipelines have gone in the last 9 years. There hasn't been all of this talk. What Pierre Poilievre has spit out is just because he wants you to believe that all of our resources aren't being tapped into, but we do not have the money to do it. We don't have foreign investment to do it. And the more we get foreign investment into our land, the more we don't own it. The more that we're not getting money for it, the foreign investment and corporations are getting it. I can tell you from living in Alberta, we're not getting billions the corporations are getting. We're being starved from our own resources.
Well, it's creating a lot of jobs, so I also would discredit that. Another reason why I didn't support the Liberal government. Sorry, just 1 second. I just have to find it here.
Well, you're finding that. Just think of what Curious Leaf just said. If you just push, okay, just let me. While you're looking, I'm not going to talk long. While you're looking for your stuff, Curious Leaf just said, if you just push it through, and yes, I agree with you, there'll be jobs, but a foreign investor will rush in. You might have 3 years of work. They'll strip the materials or the resources and leave with the cash.
For sure. Where's your source?
No, this is common sense. If you take a little time and find the balance and ensure that jobs are longer lasting and that not all the money made off those resources leaves the country, it's better for you. It's better for all of Canadians.
Prime example is
I disagree with that just because I've been citing sources or at least showing ways to get information from my sources, and you just made you kind of just made a statement off personal beliefs. So I don't really see that as valid in my personal opinion because you just made a statement with no sources backing it up.
But she just cited life experience, right?
For sure, but
political commentary.
There are
is
people
not
that have lived longer than you on this world and have had experiences, and she's sharing with you these experiences that she's seen over time.
So if you want an example, if you want an example of how they go in and rape the land of all the resources and leave the mess for everybody else,
Christine,
why don't you look at the 100?
Please.
Pardon?
You're going to say graped, please?
Oh, sorry. Graped. Why don't you look up how many abandoned oil wells are in Alberta that poison the land, poison the water, methane and benzene come off of them. And our government funded $1 billion to help them companies close them wells off. And they're still not all closed.
Yep, and Pierre wanted to give him more money.
That money and spent it on other stuff.
Exactly.
I agree in the past there wasn't proper mind process. Anyways, I just wanted to talk about the other thing, the reason why I wanted to vote conservative. So I cited the source earlier, but it's different people in here now, so I just want to say it again. All right. So as noted in a new study from the Fraser Institute from 2002-2014, and this is a direct quote, by the way. Canada's GDP per person growth kept roughly in pace with the rest of the OECD. From 2014 to 2022, the last year of available comparable data, Canada's annual growth rate declined sharply, ranking the third lowest among 30 countries overdeveloped here in the OECD. Consequently, in dollar terms, Canada's GDP per capita has only increased to 1,325 USD. During this time period, compared to the average OECD average, the increase was 5,070. So to me, it's just the economy has grown much worse, and this is and I'm just extrapolating why I think this. I think that foreign investment in Canada has been very difficult due to all the barriers and all just the taxes and due to all the barriers. Like for example, it takes many years to get things approved in Canada. So due to all these barriers for investment, I find that businesses would rather go elsewhere, which means that our economy has been much more stagnant.
UCW. So you can extrapolate. So you can extrapolate, but I couldn't.
Okay,
Well,
I just
thing
like
is,
to
I
point
source
out
actual data.
UPW, you keep going back to the Fraser Institute, but it's very inaccurate and biased.
So where's your source at?
Do you know who owns the
The,
Fraser
and I
Institute?
know what you're sourcing. You're looking at your little blue chart, right? And
I'm
this is what
looking
I've
at
talked to
data
you
from the
about
Fraser.
before. It's not real, my guy. It's
Why is
not
it not
real. The chart you're looking at, you can try to research that yourself, and you won't find that data anywhere. I have a friend right now that is actually looking into this.
I found it
And
from
he is very intelligent. If
FraserInstitute.org.
you want to go and get more information on it, go to the count path to where. He will break it down for you. He is very, very, very good at this.
The Fraser
For sure,
Institute
so-
is a far-right extremist institute funded by the far-right parties.
Do you have
Yes.
any source for that at all?
Yeah, who
Yeah,
funds?
we do.
Somebody tackle this.
Frontline wanted to say something.
Sure. Can you link a
Online?
website? Can you link anything I can do to search it up? Or
Frontline,
like that?
do you want to tackle this?
Say earlier that there's a lot of independent reports and projections that actually I think it was Christine earlier that said that a lot of these oil jobs are kind of like temporary. They're kind of a couple of years while things get set up and then they drop off. That's been talked about by Clean Energy Canada, by the Canada Energy Regulators, by the Canadian Climate Institute, and then there's also been people in government, other economic experts that have also said that. So it wasn't just feelings; it was legit. Like oil companies and oil projects, for the most part, are only going to create a short bust in jobs, and then it's going to drop off. Whereas things like clean energy and clean tech are more sustainable for the future and more sustainable jobs.
Somebody to tackle the Fraser
Sure, but you
Institute.
guys were just saying that Fraser Institute was right leaning. According to Forbes, which on Forbes Media Bias on allsides.com, it's stating that Forbes is slightly left leaning. Forbes describes. Sorry, someone's mic's really loud. I don't know who that is. Sorry about that. Anyway, so Forbes has referred to the think tank, so the Fraser Institute, as libertarian. The New York Times has described the institute as libertarian. So these two sources have both described it as libertarian.
What's the definition of libertarian?
I'm waiting.
If you'd educate me, that'd be great. I would love to be educated. I don't know.
That's not liberal.
Yeah, it's not liberal.
Okay, so
Libertarians on the right.
but how far right? Would you say?
As far right as you are.
Yep, right around there.
And basically believes it's up to you and only you to get by in your life.
Okay, I was completely wrong there. Thank you for educating me.
Okay, no worries. We're here to help and we're here to listen.
For sure, but the thing is that where else should I find my data then? If you would, because you guys keep knocking down all of my sources. So, like,
I've tried to do this to you. I told you before, go to Ground News. It will show you everywhere. It'll show you where all of the media platforms, where they are all on the political spectrum. It brings in multiple news sources, and you can see there's a little colored bar under each news story, and it'll tell you, does this lean more left, more right, or more centrist? Then you can be like, oh, okay, I can make my decisions from this. If it isn't a .org or a .gov site, then you're probably not getting the factual information directly from the source as well. Anything that's peer-reviewed, I'm sure you went through
rejecting
school.
my data then that I had
Pardon?
put forth, even though it's a more right-leaning Because, for example, the CBC is more left leaning, and if you look at MediaBias.com, they say that, or whatever your media bias sub, they say
One is a news source, one is a think tank.
Yeah.
Fraser Institute is also very well known worldwide as being climate change deniers, sorry.
So the same way that people talk about the WEF as they're a think tank pretty much as well.
And a lot of think tanks are put together, just remember this, a lot of think tanks are put together for a purpose. So if my goal as an industrialist is to hopefully loosen the rules around my being able to dump things in rivers, okay, I'm being very, that's kind of like not very specific, but let's just say I don't want to have to clean up as strictly as I should for the people surrounding the land that I'm drilling on, okay? So I put together, because I'm a $1 billion company, a think tank. I'm going to hire people that are going to put out studies that are skewed or more leaning towards what I want to get to. Why? Because I pay them.
okay, but are you just completely denying that that data is real? Like, do you not acknowledge that Canada has had much, because it's sourcing from the OECD, is what they're sourcing from as your data. So
look, not all of the data is wrong. Fraser Institute has put some data out there that is also correct. Not saying that everything that they put out is wrong, but a good way for you to understand kind of the powers pulling the strings behind these think tanks are to look at who is donating, right? Like, for example, ExxonMobil is one of the most, it's a big donor for the Fraser Institute. The Charles Koch brothers, like charitable foundation, the Cyril Freedom Trust Fund, the John Templeton Foundation, the Sarah Scaife, I can't say it properly, Scaife, I don't know, foundation, but you got to look into what these foundations are all about, where the money is coming from. There's also independent journalists that have done deep dives into all of this that you can go research. We're not saying that everything that you're saying is wrong here. I'm just saying that they are skewed towards big oil making more money.
And
that's it.
And Panda in the comments said, bring up Nestle. You know Nestle, right?
yeah,
The chocolate, hot chocolate.
yeah, I know they're an evil company. Yeah, I know they're terrible.
No,
Let her finish talking, please.
Sorry.
Don't brush me off like yeah. Because what I have to say directly reflects what you've been asking, and I think is a good and important example. And after I say it, that's when you get to disagree or not disagree.
Right.
You don't dismiss me before I speak.
I was not trying to dismiss you. I was just acknowledging that they're an evil company. I wasn't trying to dismiss you.
Okay, I misunderstood then. So Nestle wanted access to a vast majority of water here in Ontario, right? Because they need it for their product. So they did what they said were research and put forward their research saying it's not going to impact residents, people's wells won't go dry, everyone's going to be fine. Now in places like Ora, it's ORO, people's wells are going dry. There's no water for municipalities. So they do have a reason to put that out. And and it's not about Nestle being evil. I'm talking about, just ask yourself, where's this information coming from? Who's paying for it? Like, who's donating? And what might their motives be? Okay? Mm-hmm. So when you brought up the whole, I liked Pierre Poilievre because he was going to close the time gap between starting a project or asking for a project and it's actually starting. They're going to source things to back that up. So just, be mindful and go, okay, why do they really want this? Well, the company wants to make money. And who's paying for this research, and what foundation, where are they leaning on the spectrum, that sort of thing. That's what we're trying to get across.
sense. Now, what I did find is this is sourced directly from the OECD. And it states that so Canada's economy has grown only 1% from 2014 to 2024. This is versus the USA's 19%. So I think that's another example of Canada lagging behind, in my opinion, due to liberal leadership. Again, I also quoted earlier how foreign investment is down under the liberals. It seems to me that the liberals have just mismanaged the economy, and also, in my opinion, made us more dependent on. And this is just my opinion. This is my opinion is that the liberals have made us more dependent on the U.S. by making it take so long for things to get approved, such as LNG plants. It means we have to send all our oil down south. You know, at a sorry, what's the word? A discount, which is what everyone's saying in the news. At a discount. Pardon?
I was going to say that's not true. That was all
sorry.
started with Mulrooney.
One very well.
Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, let him finish, and then because I know where he's going, and you got him. Don't worry.
For sure. I'd love to hear your response after. But, like, for example, if Canada could build its own pipelines to send its own oil to Europe, for example.
What would you need to do
and
that?
then- for sure. Could I just finish saying what I'm trying to say? Thank you. So, and Canada could build its own LNG plants to actually refine the oil, then I feel like Canada could be much more reliant on itself, and I have to send 98% of the oil down to the United States. So that's my personal opinion.
So what would
Good
you
question.
do
We
that?
have
No,
an
here,
answer.
let me talk for a second. We already have an LNG plant that's opening up on the western coast. We also have other ones in the work. The problem with them is they're very expensive to build. Again, we need foreign investment. Two, the Trudeau government before he stepped down and the Trump coming in, Trudeau knew we need to stop trading with the US and we need to think more globally. His last 2 weeks in office, what did he do? He was over in Europe because he was trying to bolster our trade with Europe. In all of Pierre Poilievre's plan, his was trying to match up more trade with the United States. He thinks we need to foster our relationship with the United States. That's what Pierre Poilievre was all about, even leading up when Justin Trudeau was still in the office. He thought that our relationship with the U.S. was jeopardized. He was all for keeping our relationship with the U.S. Did you pay attention to any of that prior to the election? Mark Carney has literally got so many relationships with people in Europe. He is going to bolster our trade with Europe. He already talked about cutting off the U.S. and our relationship isn't the same with the U.S. anymore. So I don't know where you're getting that information.
Okay.
It goes back
and that's
even
valid.
further. No, I got to answer your question, buddy. It goes back even further. Curious Leaf is correct, but if you look back to when the Conservatives were last in, all right, there was a plan to make sure that we could refine oil here in Canada, right? The Liberals said we're depending too much on the Americans. We want to refine our oil so we can stop selling it as a discount and buying it back. If we refine it here, we can sell it to other nations and make more money. So there was a plan to put in the infrastructure. But the Conservatives actually voted against that. They voted it down. And if it had gone through, projections said, and I think it was either by 2017 or 2019, it would already have been in place.
I just want to jump in and say something too. In order to sell that, we have to have a national energy program. As soon as you say national energy program to a conservative, they lose their ever-loving mind.
Ashley Smith.
Okay, so I just want to say that.
Sorry, me and Curious have to laugh. But
No,
but what my point was, and I was going to jump in quickly just to add on to Christine, us getting tied to the U.S., especially in the energy sector, but basically for everything, that all started in the Mulrooney era, way back in the, I think it was mid to late 80s. So like this has been my and Curious and several of us here, our whole entire life and your whole entire life. The Conservatives tied us directly to that horse and wagon. And the Liberals have been trying desperately to kind of unhitch us slowly. And every time they try to do it, conservative governments, be it provincial or the opposition, try and stop it and bring up this whole, well, there won't be any jobs, there won't be any this, and this whole, oh my God, and all of that. So if we as Canadians want to be dependent on ourselves and reliable on ourselves and have our own economy, we have to unhitch the horse from the wagon of the US, which is, well, a sinking ship.
For sure.
Personally,
So how
that's
did
my opinion.
Mulroney help? I'm just curious. In what way did Mulroney do that? Like actually, like what example? Can you give me an example of how
He was, if memory
Off our national energy program. He sold it. We had one. Like it's that simple. Just go Google this. Go type in Mulroney National Energy Program. Just do that.
Sure, I just didn't know. I just wanted an example. Thank you.
It seems to me like you've got to go back and you've got to ask yourself some questions. So, UPW, I used to be a conservative myself and aligned quite a bit with conservatives. I lived in Stephen Harper's riding, and I'll admit that I voted for him too. And when people started having conversations with me, I kept thinking, oh, I would never vote for that. I would never, but I did. But I did vote for it. And I had to go back and I had to challenge all of my thoughts and my opinions to figure out where the heck I aligned.
For sure. And the only thing I want to talk
also
about
want to point out that you're not actively listening, because just after I gave you an example of how the Conservative Party stopped us from becoming independent and having the path to refining our own oil and selling it internationally, not 30 seconds later, you asked for an example. So when you have a discussion, and I used to be guilty of this myself, I waited for my turn to speak. I didn't listen. So just, you know what? If you got to listen and then take a beat to come up with your statement, that's better off for you, my man.
Not to mention all the things that Harper sold off. He sold off Canada Post. He sold off the wheat board to China. He sold off Air Canada. That used to be a Crown corporation. All of those things, he sold those off no problem. And then Harper also put us into a 31-year deal with China and didn't tell anyone he was doing it. And by the time it was signed and done, it was 31 years with no way to get out of it.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I'm very sorry I missed that. But the only thing I want to respond with is I just want to talk about just how the Ukraine war and all these European countries, because many European countries were relying on Russia for oil and natural gas to heat their homes, and Germany went to Canada, and here I'm just gonna pull up the sources. Germany went to Canada for natural gas, and Canada actually rejected them, and then they went to Qatar. So that was an example. The Liberals could have just helped our oil industry.
What's your source on that?
Well, sorry, I'm just gonna pull it up right now.
While you're pulling that up, 69 Toboggan also asks you to remember that Harper sold Petrocan, the wheat board, and Allcan. I don't know what Allcan is.
The wheat
Toboggan,
board
I apologize.
Wheat board is brutal. Like he sold our wheat board. As a conservative, how do you feel about that?
I also wanted to bring up like the big problem conservatives were having with Mark Carney was because of the whole Brookfield situation and how Brookfield was like hiding their investments in a foreign country so they wouldn't have to be taxed twice on it. Do you know who opened that door up?
I wasn't talking about that investment, but no, I don't.
I'm just saying, like a lot of these problems with Canada that people had with Mark Carney, again, I'm going to say I am not a liberal, but a lot of the issues that the Conservative Party was bringing up, if they just would have done the research and looked deeper into it, they would see that the problem came from policies that were made either by the Conservative Party or just weren't true. So when you are like I was saying with looking into your information, if you're looking at that Fraser Institute chart and you see the little logo at the bottom, I think it was a little red logo. If you go to that website, look at their document, and you're like, okay, where do I find this information? How did they make this chart? And it doesn't match up, then you know. If you're going to the Fraser Institute and you see all these stories, oh, these guys are all matching my ideologies, wait a minute, maybe I should fact check them or look into the donors. Like, this is what we do when we head into an election to know that we're making the right choice, or before we make a video on TikTok talking about something, we make sure that we're validating the things that we're going to talk about. And I love that you're on here asking us questions and bringing up stuff, and that you're learning things, because it's going to help you in the future. I'm not trying to change who you vote for. I just want you to become more informed and help you to become more informed in how to do it.
Yeah, like
So
when I make my content, I can hear awesome information about Mark Carney, but I won't post it until I fact check it with 3 other
Can I
sources.
please answer the Germany thing? Because it is just like, sorry, it bugs me when people say that, because Canada's East Coast lacks the necessary LNG export terminals. Building such an infrastructure would require significant investment and time, which would actually cost us more. So that's the reason that we didn't sell to Germany at the time, especially because we were in a good relationship with the United States, and it would have cost us more money and we would have been in a bigger deficit if we did that. Now maybe we're going to be pushed towards doing something like this, but constructing new pipelines and LNG facilities faces also environmental opposition, right? It would have taken a long time. We have to go through approval processes, but it costs us money. And we didn't want to sign on to doing that just to ship only to Germany, which is still a pretty small country, right? Maybe if we were shipping all over to Europe, that would have been different. But it's going to cost us some money in order to be able to even do that, because right now we don't have the infrastructure to do it. If we had the infrastructure and Trudeau just said no for shits and giggles, I would understand. But we did not have that infrastructure.
very valid point that I didn't know about. So now I do think that under maybe possibly a different government that we would have that infrastructure. But you know what, I that makes sense. If we don't have the infrastructure, it took too much money to build it, then I would see why I would
I
want to
can
do
tell
that.
you, like, for the LNG plant that's in Kitimat, like, the investors we have for that one is Shell, Petronas PetroChina, Mitsubishi Corporation, and the Korea Gas Corporation. And this was a big thing when Japan's leader went down and talked to Donald Trump when he came in, that he wanted to make a deal with him for getting LNG, which is totally kibosh now. But that was part of the deal of why they were going to the U.S. is because we weren't going to pump out enough for them, because it was taking us so long to build these plants. But we need their help and their investment to build these, but it still takes a really long time to build them. And like Frontline said, it's really expensive, and so is pipelines. Really, really expensive. The Trans Mountain pipeline, we couldn't afford it. The government of Canada had to pitch in and buy it.
I'll give you a good source of information. If you can look him up, a guy named Mr. Global, and he's American actually, but he's worked in the oil and gas industry pretty much his entire life. And I've been following this guy since way before the election, way before any of this happened. And this guy knows what he's talking about the oil and gas industry overall, in globally as well as United States and Canada. And he has followed both elections. Like, he went through the whole Trump thing, and now he's going through the whole watching the Canadian election. He's extremely intelligent. And if you really want to get a better understanding of the oil and gas industry, that's a fantastic place to go to get information.
And he's very unbiased.
I just want to point out that he has actually said negative things about both the Liberals and the Conservatives when it comes to oil and gas, because he is very neutral in that sense. Like, he knows what's going to be good and what's going to be bad. He knows what figures people are throwing around that are real or conflated. Like this, when he talks about oil and gas, he stays neutral.
I was just going to say that. He checked me, okay? I had misunderstood something or had the wrong numbers, and he will step up and say, no, that's actually incorrect. This is he sticks to the facts, and he doesn't care what side of the fence you're on. So I do recommend him as well as Christine above me on the channel does. I think he's a great source, and he knows what he's talking about. And just to reiterate, you just said something about if only we had the infrastructure, that could have been possible. I've now twice told you that we could have had the infrastructure if the Conservatives didn't shoot it down.
And I was going to add something on top of that because we're focusing solely on the federal government and their role and failing to look at the fact that, especially when you're looking at one of the larger oil producing provinces such as Alberta, it also lands on the provincial government and their role in this. And as we know, when we're talking Smith and so many other people, they don't like to play ball with the feds. They like to, Danielle Smith likes to buck the whole system as often as she can. And clearly, if you've watched any semblance of any post anywhere with her name on it, you'll have seen that. So when you're looking at these things, don't just look at the role that the federal government plays, but also look at the role of each of the provincial governments. And if you're going to do a pipeline across the country, you have to get buy-in not only by all of the Indigenous treaty nations, but you also have to get buy-in by each one of the premiers in their provinces. You can't just go build a pipeline wherever the hell you want just because you want it. Like, unfortunately, that's not how Canada rolls. If Alberta wants pipelines going west or east, they have to play ball with all of the communities that are going to be affected by it. And especially especially given the fact that Alberta doesn't love to do environmental impact assessments, that's a problem for a lot of provinces and territories within this country. So it's not just a federal government, but when you're looking at it, Alberta strictly, other than 4 years in the past, I think it's 60, don't quote me on that, but it's 50 to 60 years, has been, other than 4 years, under Rachel Notley, has been a strictly conservative province, be it Reform, Wild Rose, UCP, PC. They rebrand themselves so often I can't keep up just to try and keep the votes up. Sorry, I have to put that in there. You can't, you got to take the jokes when you can get them. But it's true, though. You got to take the jokes when you can get them. But they have actively tried to ensure that they don't work well with the other provinces. And so they're not getting what they want. If you want Quebec to buy in to your pipeline, then you have to respect what Quebec needs in order to do that. And a conservative government isn't good at that. Look at what they're doing with the whole fanning the flames of separation, because they didn't get the federal prime minister that they wanted. So like this goes way beyond just the federal government and their decisions under Justin Trudeau, Carney, Chrétien. We could keep going. It goes so deep into each one of the provinces and also their leaders subsequently over history and what they've sold off.
Can I add a little bit to that, Tiffany?
Absolutely. And feel free to fact check me.
I also want to share with you WX that I was quite ignorant for a long time on how our government worked and fell into the trap that premiers like to pull on us. And that is point the finger to the federal government, especially when the federal government is not the same party they're in. So I'll give you a good example. I'm in Ontario. We have a conservative premier, and housing is obviously a big issue. And he kept screaming that the federal government wasn't, budgeting and not giving us money for housing. But then someone pointed out to me that when the federal budget gets designed, which will include a portion for housing, it's then released to our provinces, and then it's up to the premier. The federal government can't tell them afterwards what to use that money for. Yes, it's earmarked for housing, but that doesn't mean you can make a premier spend it that way. And Doug Ford, after pointing and screaming at the federal government, got his money for housing, and instead of investing that in affordable housing, he cut a check for everyone of voting age here in Ontario and sent us all $200 just before the election.
Yeah, for sure. I just to respond to that.
Wow, I just told you that someone bought your vote, and you went, "Yeah, sure."
Well, I just wanted to respond.
This is that active listening part that she's talking about, and this is why I asked you at the beginning.
when I said, "Are you like processing this? Like, what does this
No,
information
no,
mean
no,
to
no.
you?"
I heard that part. And so, and first of all, they didn't buy my vote because I live in Ontario, so no one bought my vote. And second of
Who
all,
bought your vote?
Your vote somehow. I guarantee he did.
Come on back.
And the only other thing I want to say is that I wouldn't say that the Ontario Premier is pro Pierre Poilievre. Like, he's actually criticized Pierre Poilievre many times. And also on that Rachel Notley bit,
Do you think it's just because he wants his job?
I
He's
would
one of the
I
crookedest SOBs out there. He
well
does everything
he's
for
made
money.
many
He's
criticisms of Pierre Poilievre, so I wouldn't say he's pro Pierre Poilievre in any way.
He's pretending not to be pro
criticized
Poilievre because
Carney,
he
so-
wants to keep his job and he wants to be the next leader of the opposition. That's why. Don't kid yourself. Doug Ford's no liberal.
He's out for himself.
100%. Him and Kenny are going to fight it out for that job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I well just off what he's saying, because I don't really know what's in his head, to be completely frank. So I can't say that he's pro conservative when he's said multiple anti-conservative things. But if you want to have that belief, that's totally in your right.
Trump is his.
I don't think he says anti conservative
There's
things.
different-
He says anti Poilievre things.
Exactly.
There's different levels to being a conservative, like there's different levels of being a socialist. I'll give you an example. My father is a conservative voter, and he doesn't like Danielle Smith at all. I live in Alberta because she is too far
Sorry.
right wing for him. Yeah.
Sure.
So it's
the
like,
only thing I
I am
that-
more socialist. I appreciate Mark Carney, but I would like more of a NDP leader, not Jagmeet Singh. Just throw that in there, but someone else.
For sure. And the only reason
I'm NDP. I'm not liberal either.
And the only reason why I think Rachel Notley wasn't super popular, and this is data from Alberta.ca, so it's legitimate data, is that they spiked debt massively.
It's propaganda from the Alberta government, but nice try. Thank you for that. As somebody who is an Albertan,
Tell
I
us
can...
why we didn't like Rachel Notley.
Yeah,
Right
go
away.
ahead.
So what data should I use then, if it's not from the Alberta government? Because
Ask me and Curious, who are both Albertans and have lived through the Notley years, the Kenny years, the Daniel Smith years, Ralph Klein years,
I lived through everything but Daniel
Stelmack, don't forget him.
Oh yeah,
I
the
feel like
Stelmack
you're just listening to
Academy
a
is
bot.
where a lot of Albertan people, a lot of Albertan trolls.
okay, so
we just graduated.
So please tell me what did the Alberta government say about Rachel Notley? I'm curious.
okay, well, okay, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but sometimes I can feel like I can't use any source because I feel like you guys call misinformation.
No, just say what it is. I'm open to hearing it.
Sure.
Yep.
Debt massively went up under the Rachel Notley government.
For what reason?
I don't know. Well, for what reason? Because they spent a lot more, and in my opinion, not in the right ways. So.
Have you looked at the debt recently for Danielle Smith? It's way, way, way more than Rachel Notley. And she didn't have a massive forest fire like the Fort Mac one, which I actually escaped from to deal with.
And also, Rachel Notley took over the debt from the previous government when it came out, and then we had our oil crash during that time as
And
well.
the Conservatives also targeted a war room against Rachel Notley, like a war room that actively and every day spread horrible misinformation about Notley.
Well, it's from Alberta.ca.
And they did that because Alberta is historically conservative. So the fact that that lady got in, they had to do everything in their power. So they did convene a council to actively spread misinformation against her. And what really disturbs me is that when I told you about Doug Ford, it didn't dawn on you that it should matter just because you're not in Ontario. Maybe later think about what I told you.
Christine, can I share something for a sec, Christine? I think it's because he's just here for the burn and the debate. I don't
Do you know that
think
trend?
No, I did think
process the
about it. I
information.
did think about it for sure. I
Do you know
did
that
think about
Trans
it.
Mountain Pipeline?
The only thing is, and I responded with that. And yes, sorry, I just want to respond to your other comment before I respond to you, Curiosity I know the rest of the name. Sorry, it blanks out. But all I want to say is that I don't think that he is a Pierre Poilievre, because you said Pierre Poilievre bought my vote. That's what you said. I don't know who it was. I'm sorry. There's a lot of names on here. Sometimes I get confused.
It was totally
Okay.
me. I will
Sorry.
own that. Totally.
Sorry, it was you. It was you. So
Yep.
all I'm trying to say is that I don't think Pierre Poilievre bought my vote if the guy who sent everyone money as a check is anti-Pierre Poilievre. You know? Does that make sense?
He's
Those-
not anti-Pierre
No, that doesn't
Poilievre.
make any sense.
Well,
Let
he's
me answer
criticized
that.
Pierre Poilievre many
Please,
times.
I brought that up. I'll answer that.
Sure.
Okay. For the longest time, well, not forever, I should say. Well, Doug Ford's a conservative, right? So it behooves him to want to keep getting elected, and part of that is towing the company line and being a good conservative. But with a lot of politicians, once they start to see the cracks, and once Doug Ford started to see that Pierre was slipping in popularity, he could sort of guess, and turns out he was right, that Pierre could and did actually end up losing his seat. And historically, when a conservative leader loses their seat, the Conservative Party fires them. They're gone. So what does that mean? They're going to need a new leader. And as a politician, you want to move up the ranks. So if recently he's been casting aspersions, it's only been towards Pierre, not the Conservative Party, because he most likely wants that job. I mean, I would, if that was, my goal in any job would be to move up the ranks, get better pay, etc.
Okay. And we can both have that different. In my opinion, he just doesn't support Pierre and the Conservative Party in general. And we can just have separate opinions on that, and that's completely fair. I do want to head off pretty soon here because I do have somewhere to go. But I just want to state.
Can I please say something to you before you go? Because I've barely gotten a chance to talk all night.
I have something to say right after you.
Sure. And I will respond a little longer. I just want to head off pretty soon.
Okay, I just want to say this especially to young people in general and to a lot of conservative supporters. If you want to truly understand any country's current political, economic, social situations, you have to look beyond just the current and recent government of the last 5-10 years. Countries change very slowly, much slower than people, much slower than trends, because you have institutions, laws, and cultural shifts that take decades to fully evolve. Look at Harper's 30-year deal with China. That is 3 freaking decades long. People need to take these things into consideration. You also need to take giant global setbacks into consideration, like the pandemic, like wars that disrupt trade routes. All of those things need to be taken into consideration. Also, policies that are passed today might not show their full impact for 10 to 20 years. And in many cases, the struggles that we see now are rooted in decisions that were made 30 to 40 years ago, like we talked about earlier with Mulroney selling off our national energy program. Things like housing, wage stagnation, environmental degradation, rising inequality are not the result of one government's failure. They're genuinely the product of decades and decades of deregulation, underfunding, privatization, policy neglect, etc. When a government tries to fix things, it often has to untangle the bullshit of the previous decisions made by other leaders. And that takes time. And I know that everybody thinks that 9 years is a long time, but when we are talking about the changes of an entire country, 9 years is a drop in the bucket. So I want to urge everybody that understanding history is about recognizing the systems that take time to build and take time to dismantle. So if we want to fix this country's problems, we have to be honest about how deep these problems go, how much time and effort it will actually take to create lasting change, and be able to work together and understand that it is not an us versus them thing. It's all about how they tie in together and what happens in the last 3, 4, even 5 decades. That's the only way to move forward.
And I agree. 100% everything Frontline said, and what I kind of wanted to add, and it's not really related, but more related to the fact that UpWX had said something about getting paid checks by Ford. as somebody who lived in Alberta, and Curious Leaf will remember this, that is a old school conservative trick pony. Started, I believe, by Klein. Then Stelmach did it, and it's been done multiple times. What that is it's a trick pony that's brought out when they aren't sure if they can win a majority. So they send everybody like $300, $400, $500 or whatever, just because you think you're getting something and you're super excited, and that's enough to buy people's votes and have them not look at any of the policies that the party is putting forward, and then discount anything the opposition is offering, because they know people love instant gratification more than they love long-term benefits. And so
For sure.
that's what I meant by you were totally bought, not just by Ford, but also by PP, because you know what? Ford is manipulating everybody into thinking that he doesn't want to support PP because he saw a losing horse and he ran from it the other direction. Danielle Smith, on the other hand, decided to run right towards that thing with both barrels and a big hug, because she represents the far extreme right of that party, and Ford, I'm gonna say maybe closer to the center right, because the Conservative Party's never really been center anything, but I'm gonna loosely give them that. But
Sure.
you've been bought. The whole thing, hook, line, and sinker, just like that. The whole thing is tricks that have been done, and I get it. You are too young to remember a lot of these things. That's why we're bringing them up.
And not to mention, go back even further in history, and you look at things like all of the rights and freedoms that you have today were brought forth by liberals.
Yep.
That whole minimum 40-hour work week thing, that was a liberal thing. The conservatives voted against that stuff. Any kind of rights for women to be able to work in the workplace or get a bank account or be able to take out a mortgage, those are all things that liberal or NDP side politics pushed forward. You wouldn't have those rights if it wasn't for liberals. Conservative people have voted against that for years. They're against unions. They don't want the companies to have to pay you a good wage. They don't want people to have to get extra money for working over 40 hours a week. The companies don't make money if they have to do that. That's what the Conservative Party for the last, since inception, that's what they're about.
Could I please respond to Tiffany's comment on me being bought, please? Before I respond to yours?
Sure.
Anyways, so the only thing I want to say is, first of all, and could I just please say my full statement before you guys comment? Anyways, so the only thing I want to say is that you could say that's very similar to the Liberal government cutting off the GST right before the election. You could say that's the exact same thing. The federal Liberal government did that exact same thing.
No.
Sure, how is it different?
Because what the Liberals did is they gave a holiday. They didn't cut it off. GST is not gone. It's alive and well. I know because I have a bookkeeping business. I file it for all of my clients. It was a small break to alleviate people from financial stress that they knew was coming given Trump's presidency and a lot of unprecedented things. You got what is called Ralph Bucks, is what it's lovingly known as in Alberta. It's called Ralph Bucks. Look it up. Ralph Bucks. It's like, and Stelmach Bucks, if you want to go second party. So like you were bought, that is it. I don't even know how, like I was angry when Ralph Bucks came out when I was a young voter, because it made me so upset, because instead of funding our healthcare and education properly, he decided to give everybody $400 or $500 instead.
Upwax, we just found out that you might be 17, dear.
Is that true?
No, it's not true.
Okay.
But yeah, so that it's called Ralph Bucks. It's a thing. And no, you cannot compare it to a GST holiday. That was a break to alleviate society from certain extra tax costs on certain products. So no, they're not the same thing.
And there wasn't a federal election at that time. And it really does sort of show how PP was always saying, axe the tax, axe the tax. And then when the NDP brought that bill forward, the Liberals and NDP wanted it to go through, and Pierre Poilievre didn't even show up to vote on that bill.
Yeah, the only difference, okay, well, first of all, carbon tax and GST are two separate taxes, and Pierre Poilievre has always been axe the carbon tax. And the other thing I want to comment on is the Liberals knew an election was coming up. Obviously, we weren't actively in an election period, but the Liberals knew an election was coming up quite soon. Now, I just want to leave one last thought for this, and this is just completely off topic, but I'm just going to go right now. I just want to leave one last thought. And I hope this isn't too controversial, but it may be. So, and I'm sure it may be a little bit controversial.
You're gonna leave this thought and run?
For sure. And this is the source of the BBC, so it's a legitimate source. The government the federal Liberal government introduced MAID in 2016. And now 1 in 20 deaths in Canada are from MAID, which is around 16 times California rates, which also introduced at a very similar time. And I just want to hear what you guys have to think about that.
Me.
Especially when it's being offered to people who don't need it.
Me.
Anyway.
I'm in healthcare.
Yeah, and who are you to deem it not needed or necessary?
Well, because in certain scenarios, and Christine, I'm not trying to be disrespectful at all, and this may hit a little bit close home to you. So just let me know if this is too much. But this is a real true thing. A veteran woman who was in a wheelchair, I asked the federal government to get a wheelchair ramp, and she had gotten offered MAID instead of getting a wheelchair ramp. She still doesn't have one.
Okay.
And
Okay.
that's a true story.
I'm
So
gonna
It's a
sign
true
up
story
for
from
MAID.
who? Your cousin's brother's nephew that told it to you on Facebook?
Mustafa.
no, there is a. There's not a documentary. Sorry, there's an interview of this woman.
Okay.
There's an interview of this woman. So you can
I
search
work
up
in
who it was.
healthcare. And let me tell you something. Let me explain to you what my job is, because I actually know more than the average healthcare worker. Okay. I work in a health records department, so I'm behind the scenes. So when a patient is admitted to a unit, they have paperwork, consent forms, doctor's notes, prescriptions, whatever. It's paperwork that goes with that chart. Also, what goes with that chart is a death certificate. So a death certificate that shows the cause of death, what happened, why it happened, all of those things. I also get all the MAID documents, the organ donor documents. So I see the MAID documents come down every day. That's my job, is to take those paper documents and scan them into the digital chart. What I am telling you is MAID happens once in a blue moon. Do you know how many death certificates I see come across my desk every single day in a hospital? And I see one MAID in I don't even know. I might get one once a month. So whatever numbers you're being told are propaganda. I'm telling you what I'm seeing. And it's the same people that are spreading the propaganda that the COVID did not exist. I saw the death certificates of 32-year-old men with 0 prior comorbidities dying of COVID-19. They were not another condition that they had. It had nothing to do with the fact that they had cancer. These were young, healthy men who were out jogging, got COVID, and died. And I saw these death certificates with my own eyes. So don't believe the propaganda that you're hearing, because they have an ulterior motive to get you to believe that.
Okay, can I talk?
Can I? Oh,
Hold
wait,
on.
I'm answering.
Wait,
I got
we
something to
can't-
say.
You asked the question, you're going to mute, and other people are going to respond. You threw it out there, and we can't all talk over each other, or we can't hear it. Frontline, you're next, and then we'll go to Prairie Princess.
Go to Prairie Princess. It's all good.
Are you sure?
Okay. I'm applying for MAID, just so you know. I have Tourette's syndrome. I have had it my entire life. I will never get rid of it. I will live with this forever. If by chance that I get Alzheimer's, I want to be prepared, because that means that my brain will not be able to tell me how to use the rest of my body. Anybody who knows anything about Tourette's, try to stop a sneeze, and do that every second of your life since I was 5 years old. If I get Alzheimer's, my brain will not be able to tell me to twitch, which means every second of my life that my brain stops telling me to twitch, I will be in excruciating discomfort and pain, because I will be in that moment before you sneeze where your brain can't tell you to sneeze. I fucking rights will be signing up for MAID, because I don't think anyone in my family wants to know that I am going through the most excruciating pain and discomfort until the day I am no longer here, which for Alzheimer's could be days, hours, years, and months. So be careful when you use the word MAID. Thank you.
You can take
me
Thanks,
off.
Fairy Princess. I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm going to answer the Army one. I want to tell you about the Army thing. All right. First of all, when I was in the military, there was a list, and every part of your body and every condition that happened to you as a result of your service was given a monetary amount of money that you could receive. So if you lost your pinky, you would get so much money, and it was capped. The amount of money, say you lost an arm, for your service was outrageously and pathetically and insultingly low. Who came up with that list? Bingo! And when I served and got my spinal cord injury as a result of this list and other rules, guess what I had to do? I had to sue because they tried to deny that it was a part of my service. Because of the rules that the Conservative Party put in regards to injuries in the military. So don't come at me with one anecdotal example of a woman that didn't have a ramp.
Frontline, would you like to chime in?
Don't feel like I have as much information about MAID as some other people, but I don't see a problem with it. It's quite basic.
I can speak to MAID as well.
Go ahead.
So for me, dementia runs in our family. And I have seen many people go through this, including my mother, who just passed away this past weekend.
Sorry.
And we didn't have anything set up for her with MAID. And she suffered because once you get that disease, you can no longer make decisions for yourself. So MAID really doesn't become something that you can participate in. Right, necessarily, because sometimes our relatives will keep us alive for their own, needs, right? Not because they're trying to be mean or cruel, just because they're suffering as well with, the potential loss. So I know that with my mother just passing this last weekend and knowing everything that she went through, I will be signing a MAID. I will not go through that.
Can I say something?
I have a question real quick though.
I was just gonna chime in and let Acadian, he just joined us, and then we can swing back to you. But I did want to say to Shauna, I'm so sorry for your loss.
Yeah, I'm so sorry for your loss.
Me
That's
too.
absolutely terrible.
Okay, go ahead,
thank you.
Acadian. Thank you. Acadian?
Oh, hello?
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, so I'm a mortician and I have been for the past decade. And I've dealt a lot with MAID and spoken to a lot of people who have done MAID. And, they'd call us at the funeral home and arrange for everything. In order to do MAID, you can't have dementia. You can't have like full blown dementia because you have to be of sound mind when the doctor asks you if they're ready to administer the medication. So in order to have MAID, like you can't pre arrange for that to when you get to a point where you're not of sound mind anymore. So somebody like speaking about even the ramp and being elderly and not being able to do that, like there's so many like rules when it comes to MAID. You have to be terminally ill. You have to like you can't just do it for mental health. There's a lot of rules and regulations with MAID.
I have a question about MAID.
Yeah.
Is MAID a form or is it a replacement for DNR, or I'm unclear.
Okay, so with MAID, what happens is you meet with a team of doctors, and they see that you're terminal, and then usually what happens is they don't do it very often in hospitals. Usually it happens at home, and the doctor will come to your home and they administer medication, and then you die, basically, the euthanasia, basically.
And a painkiller sort of thing?
Yeah, they give you something to calm you down, and then they intravenously give you the medication, and then you fall asleep.
So I didn't know that about MAID at all. And
Yeah.
that's kind of, I mean, I don't understand that, to be honest with you.
You could
Like,
probably
I
get
think that needs to evolve.
you could probably get a DNR, but
Yeah.
that's not a pre-planned thing. That's if you go into
Yeah.
cardiac arrest.
Yeah.
But
They don't
essentially,
do
like in the
life-saving.
hospital, in the hospital, like my aunt was an ICU nurse for almost 40 years. And I mean, when you're terminally ill, when you're dying, they essentially pretty much, kill you with morphine. So, like they give you something to make you comfortable. So, I mean, it's almost the same thing, like really.
Yeah,
I'd like to
I got my RN license, and when you go into hospital, as long as you're of sound mind, you can
Yeah.
request a DNR, and
Okay.
that just goes on your chart. And that means if you go into a cardiac arrest, that they will not perform life-saving like CPR, basically.
Right.
I'd
So yeah,
like
it's not like MAID at all.
Right between MAID and because MAID is you're asking for medical like dying.
Assistance in yeah, exactly.
So I'd like to get another voice into this conversation, and we just welcomed. I can't pronounce your name.
Oh,
Can you share that with me,
just Faye.
Poppy? Pardon?
Faye is good enough.
Faye.
Faye.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks for
Um,
joining us.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to not pipe up while people are having very good discussions.
Thank you.
My
Appreciate it.
my wife is PSW frontline outpatient, so
Okay.
that's where, and I live in Ontario, and that's thanks to Mr. Doug Forty cutting his budget so hard. Hospitals are overflowing, and so they are basically kicking people out as quickly as they possibly can, even if they shouldn't be discharged from the hospital. She gets them. These are people who are on the verge of unaliving, and that was not her job. That was not what she signed up for. That was not her role she was supposed to be in. She was supposed to be geriatrics. Now she is literally taking care of everything from dementia and Alzheimer's to people with broken hips, people who will never walk again, people who are, excuse me, very, very slowly being unalived as something eats them from the inside. She has seen MAID twice. Now keep in mind, she comes in at least twice a week, and she's just crying. Her favorite patient is gone. This is routine, and I mean no shade to WPX at all. It is a dignified way out, because as she put it, and now we're both having that in our living will. You get to choose the manner, and as she put it, she was there to witness one of them, and it was, I can't remember and the specifics about what was used, but it was, the family was there was music playing, the patient who was not that old but who was well, thank you Mother Nature for eating this person from the inside out, on borrowed time, and it would have gone very horribly painfully bad. We're talking agony. So while she wasn't in that agony, she requested MAID. And the family was there, there was music, it was a celebration of life, and then she just said, okay, I'm ready to go to sleep now. That to me is an absolute mercy. And what Ford has done to healthcare and to people like my wife, who are just broken all the time because they should not have to take people who should be in the hospital, it is absolutely disgusting what the Conservatives have done to this healthcare system.
Thank you for sharing that. On that note, I just wanted to share with everyone that it's 9:23 and I went a little over my time. So what I can do here is, I think it'd be good to wrap up, maybe giving everybody, a few minutes each to speak.
Could I just really quick? First of all, I just want to say, for everyone who's going through severe mental, sorry, not mental. For everyone who's going through severe these health conditions, it's terrible, and just absolutely terrible. The only reason I brought that up was I just wanted to note how, just in my, I've just heard, now again, these are anecdotal stories from people who are getting interviewed, but I just feel that there's certain scenarios where people are being offered it or being given the opportunity to do MAID when it's not absolutely necessary. Like in again in a comparable nation of if from California, it's 16 times less used. And I completely understand people who do use it. I'm just saying that I feel like that it's used too soon sometimes in many scenarios. Like 1 in 20 deaths in Canada are now from MAID, and that just it's quite concerning to me, you know. And my source is the BBC, which is a very reputable source, so it's just concerning to me. And I totally understand if people use it. I 100% get it. It's just concerning to me how it's being used in this country, because I feel like sometimes people do have an option and they just feel like that MAID is their only option, and that they may just turn to it a little too quickly. But I completely understand everyone's stories and yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Can I
Is there
just
anything else? Go
can I
ahead.
just respond really quickly to one thing that I suspect Up WX is not considering? Have you considered the fact that we have a severely aging population right now? And that might be a lot of the cause of an uptick in the use of this program, because baby boomers are now reaching ages where they might need these types of services, where previously 10, 20, 30 years ago, they would not have, even if they did exist. So when you're looking at stories or looking at stats, you need to look at the fact that are they giving you data on the ages that are using this, on what types of issues are going on, of people who are choosing to use these services. Like, I wish this type of service had been around when my grandma needed it and had dementia and Alzheimer's, because at the end she had no idea who I was, who anybody was, where she was, her favorite pastime, which, you know, British ancestry, you got to drink your tea. It's a requirement in life. They were giving her thickener in her tea, because if she drank tea without thickener in it, she would drown because she couldn't swallow it properly. Because and these are the things that happen. And had MAID been around as a service, that might and she had known about it while she still was of sound mind, that might have been something we could have talked to her about and had it in place. Because to me, that's not a quality of life. So if you're not looking at data that doesn't look at an aging population, doesn't look at a whole bunch of different host of factors, and you're looking at one or two anecdotal stories of people who are looking for grifts to use to taint a program, kind of like the Axe the Tax movement, which was not just an axe the tax, but also an axe the any of the refunds we were getting. It isn't really an honest story. You're only getting the story that you're being told to color your vision of this program. And you're looking at this program without looking at it in a full scope of proper data. And it's really sad that that is happening to our system and our society, that they're utilizing something that is so very necessary for so many people as a grift to win elections or to get votes or whatever. It's disgusting, actually. Pardon my French. It's effing disgusting.
Thank you. Shauna, would you like to have a minute?
Yeah, I just kind of think that people should be allowed to make their decisions. Like, mental health does not mean that you're not suffering and that you're not in pain. It doesn't mean that. And I think that I'm 58 years old, and like I said, seeing so many people in my family get dementia and suffer, because it's just not dementia, you're also aging. So other things happen to you. You get heart disease, or you have liver problems, or whatever else that can cause you great discomfort in your old age that you don't want to go through, and you don't have to go through. We put dogs down before they're ready to go, right? Because we say it's peaceful and better for them, but we don't allot humans the same kind of choice. For me, I believe it's your choice as to what you would like to do. If you want to prepare for your death in the future, I mean, I'm 58, I'm not dying tomorrow. But if I want to plan, what is my future going to look like? What's my ideal way to live? And what's my line in the sand where I don't want to anymore? Right? And what's the reason? I'm not talking about depression or things of that nature. There needs to be more mental health out in the communities for people like that so that they don't unalive themselves that way. I'm talking for medical reasons, right? You don't want to suffer in your old age with things like that. And I don't think that the government should have a say in whether you should be able to have that choice or not. That's just my opinion because of what I see and as a mental health worker. And we do need to put a lot of money into mental health programs within Canada because of the the drug issues that we have. For sure, there's not enough mental health. And when you looked at the people in BC who were, I'm sorry, what nationality were they when they had that concert or whatever they were doing? I'm sorry, not Latina,
Filipino.
but yeah, and they drove, the one man drove through. That would not have happened if we had enough mental health help for these people, because the police had dealt with that person the day before. And that's something next time I'm on that I'd really like to get into with people and talk about that, because that was avoidable.
Shauna, maybe we can connect and we can organize and have you as a guest.
I'd love that. Thank you. This is my first time up here and I absolutely loved it. So thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining. I'll reach out to you. I really appreciate your thoughts. Vay, would you like to share a little bit before we leave? Final thoughts?
Absolutely. Long time watcher, and I'm sorry I didn't get more of an opportunity.
So am I.
No worries. So I am Christina. I'm a vet too. I'm a General Service Medal NCD, and recruited out of Toronto, and spent most of my time in all over Ontario. Fell in love with the wife, and then pulled pin. I'm now a civil infrastructure guy, land development and environmental, particularly environmental impacts from land development. So I think I've got a lot to say about especially the housing problem and why things are happening. I jumped up, I requested up because I wanted to talk to WPX about something, and again, no shade. You're young. I was a Tory, and if you know what a Tory is, then, well, you're young, so you probably don't know what a Tory is. We were purged. We were asked to leave by Harper and the Conservatives when they came in. We were told we're not permitted to question the king, and we weren't, frankly, bigoted enough. We were all gotten rid of. I was a Joe Clark guy. I'm older. And again, no shade to you. I work with a lot of young people, a lot of contractors, and I understand what you feel, because I feel it too. I've been feeling it. I have missed every single opportunity to own a home or get ahead. I get it, but you're incorrect in a lot of your things, and it's not because you're a bad person. It's because you lack the context. And I think a lot of Canadians do lack the context, and that's all. And I hope I have the opportunity to talk about, especially about the housing. At least I know most about Ontario, the environmental and housing, as to why things are happening. But yeah, that's it. You guys are awesome, and I will always continue to listen. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you. Christina.
It's Christine, but that's okay. It's small letters.
Did I say? I thought I said Christine. Sorry.
Oh, no, the gentleman underneath me, and I can't pronounce your name. I guess
said
it's
call him Vay.
Yeah, Vay. I knew a Christina. We didn't get along. So, but it's really not an issue. I shouldn't have said that. I have a CD, and that's all I can tell you. If you know, you know. Up WX. All right. I too appreciate that you had the intestinal fortitude to come up here and speak with people that you knew were not in alignment with you completely. I hope you work on the listening. I know it improved my life immensely when I sat down. It made connection and learning from other people better, and it improved my life because I had a lot of misconceptions. And if I just waited for my turn to speak so I could fight and somehow argue, I wasn't growing as a person. And when I was listening to you, you used the words, I don't think it's a good thing made. I don't think it's a good thing to do. Well, the good news is you don't have to use it. But perhaps in my life, I think it's a good fit for me. So it's there for those that need it and for those that don't want to use it. And also keep in mind, they're not doing it to people, all right? It's done in conjunction with a willing participant and a trained and licensed physician. They're not having it done with people that can't make a cognitive decision. So people that are already have dementia or people with a mental illness can't just say, I'm so depressed, I want to leave this world. Okay? And I, in my life, would much rather have the option to say, you know what? Just before the turning point comes between some discomfort and pain and absolute agony every day of my life for the next maybe year, I would like to gracefully and in a loving situation with my friends and family around me say a peaceful goodbye instead of suffering. So again, the great news is you don't have to use this, but other people, if they choose to, with a physician's guidance, right? Because they've got to sign off on it, get to. And that's a great freedom.
Thank you, Christine.
I disagree with the idea of it. I just disagree with how widely it's being used.
Okay, well, we're not debating anymore. We're just kind of ending. So we're just kind of having final thoughts. Okay. Tiffany.
Hey, sorry for the.
Right, I had one more thing. The article you read was actually a opinion piece, just to add that.
I was going to ask that because I suspected that that was likely the case. So thank you for confirming, Christine. I appreciate that. Sorry for the little rant on how I felt about MAID because it's a trigger point for me when politicians use this as a tool to garner votes because it feels so vile for me. That's my feeling. It sickens me. It feels vile. I think if I was to give any advice to anybody out there, it's really important to really source the information you're looking at. Opinion pieces are not a reliable resource. I can go write an opinion piece about what I think about anything on the planet. I could go write it about how I feel about Danielle Smith and her, well, we could go on a diatribe list of all the things I feel about her, but that wouldn't make it necessarily fact, right? Now, should I choose to source and resource cite all of the things that I'm giving an opinion on and cite where I found that, what the stats are, all of those things, that's a different story. But an opinion piece just means I think she's garbage for the province of Alberta and hasn't done us anything, and that is my personal opinion. But it doesn't make it a fact, because I guarantee there's people who think otherwise. So, up WX, I hope by the next election, whenever that is in the future, that when you are looking for candidates to vote for and for a party to support, that you please really seriously look at what your values are as a person, what your personal values are, because that's the most important part first. And then second to that, look to the party's policy declaration first, because their policy declaration is not what the party puts, like not what the party leader puts forward as a platform, but what the party itself, all of the members, so all of us who join a party, including myself or anybody else in the country of Canada choosing to join the party of their choice, we get to vote on what the policy declaration is. So all the things that we want to see the party do. So read the policy declaration and then read the platform. See if the platform aligns with what the policy declaration says. Because if it doesn't, there's an issue. And then look to what the leader is saying out there. Is the way they're behaving, is that aligning with your values as a person? Things like that, because choosing to vote for somebody just because they said this, that, or the other thing, well, anyone can say anything. Honestly, the two top politicians in Canada who lie the most often are Pierre Poilievre and Danielle Smith. I think followed up by any of the other conservative leaders we have in this country, to be honest. But those two, right up there at the top two. And so it's important for you to really look at these things, source these things. Opinion pieces are useless, just like Wikipedia. So just, I'm advocating for this, not just for you, but for anybody who's listening, because the important thing is to not just look at sources like an opinion piece, so one in this and one in that. Well, is that the actual stats for this country? Okay, in those stats, what's kind of going on? Like, really start looking at it and critically thinking rather than just believing what somebody's telling you, because unfortunately, we all know fact checking has disappeared on social media, and I'm going to go with probably most of Google. So just please.
Thank you, Tiffany. We really
Thanks.
And for, just to respond,
Tiff, no, we're not responding right
Okay,
now.
it wasn't an opinion article, but
This
okay.
is thanks. I appreciate that. But my phone battery is dying. I'm really not trying to be a jerk. I'm just trying to wrap this up, and then when my battery dies, next show we can have more time, and you can come up and explain yourself again if you'd like. Acadian.
So I agree with getting facts and things like that as opposed to reading opinion pieces. If you want to know something, go to the people that do it. As in, like with MAID, specifically what we were talking about. I for 10 years I've been working in death care, and I've seen thousands and thousands of people come through my funeral home, and I've waited at in the morgue for people coming through that I've done MAID, and I've heard nothing but good things about it. And people don't want to shrivel up and become unalived and weigh 50 pounds and essentially rot away in front of their families. They want to go out strong, ish, with dignity. You want to be able to say goodbye to people properly. And it's always been a party, actually, that I've when our transfer team would come in and they're like, you know what, they were singing, they were it was a really good goodbye. And I've always heard really good things about it. Is it overused? No, I don't think at all. I think everyone should have their their say and how they want to go. And I think it's good that it's legal, and hopefully one day we can pre-plan so that when people have, with dementia, essentially, your body shuts down as you forget things with your mind. You forget how to eat, you forget how to swallow, you forget everything. And that's how you essentially become unalive. Your body breaks down. So hopefully one day that law changes, and you can kind of pre-plan for that. And that's about all I have to say about that.
Thanks for joining us, Acadian. I really appreciate your thoughts. Frontline Feminist, do you want to go right now, or do you want?
Sure, I can add a little bit of something to that.
Okay.
What I wanted to add is that just to be fair, not all opinion pieces are misinformation, right? There are some opinion pieces that are valid, good information. The only thing that we have to be aware of is when we do read an opinion piece, we should probably fact check it. If there are, things labeled as facts, we should definitely check those numbers, or check that data elsewhere just to make sure they're right. Now, I don't know anything about this opinion piece. I haven't read it, but there's some opinion pieces that are very valid and very good. So I just don't want to discredit some independent journalists and professionals and intellectuals that do end up writing opinion pieces. They just need to be a little fact checked. That's all. Other than that, when it comes to MAID, I know this is going to sound bad. I'm not trying to lump a bunch of issues together, but for example, when it comes to MAID, when it comes to AB, these are things that people are going to do no matter what, if they want to. That's the key thing that we need to realize. If somebody wants to not be here anymore, they can do it without MAID. The whole point of doing it through MAID is so that it's safer. I know that sounds weird, but so that it's less painful, less traumatizing, because the people in the family are going to usually know about it, right? They're going to have time to get prepared. It won't be as sudden. Same with AB stuff, right? Women have been getting ABs and doing like self ABs since the dawn of time, right? The reason that we have access to it now medically is so that it can be safer and so that women don't end up being unalived from that process. But all of these things, when it comes to our addiction population, right? Things like safe sites, those are all measures to do these things in a much safer way, understanding human nature, because people are going to do things no matter what. And MAID is actually good because you have to go through a lot of counseling before you go through with it. So maybe somebody wants to unalive, they apply for MAID, and then they realize by applying for MAID that they're not actually ready to go. So there's a lot of benefits to these programs, and I just think that we really need to take human nature into consideration here and understand that these programs are to increase safety and to make life better for people.
Thank you. I kind of too, when you were talking there, Frontline, it's also like it's the family, it's you, but it's also the EMT in the first line of people that are affected when we find somebody that's unalive themselves, right? So this kind of makes it into a little bit more of a neater, I don't want to say neat, it's the wrong word. I'm not, a cleaner experience, an easier experience for everybody.
It's safer for the whole community, right? Yeah. Outside of the first responders, which are often traumatized when they find that happen, it's also the community, because sometimes people find that before first responders, right? So it's just better for the community.
Yeah. And I'll be a person that if I have the opportunity, I will certainly take advantage of it. And working in the unhoused community, I hear a lot of people talk about it. I hear a lot of people that will say, maybe that's a better choice than living like this. And that's not for me to judge. That's for me to let them deal with their feelings and connect them if they need those, want to have those conversations. And you know, it's such a personal thing. I would never question anybody on it because we have all of those things tied up in this conversation. You know, they have to go to counseling. They have to do all of those things. I'd also submit to you, when I was in Nova Scotia last summer, my mom's friend said to me, I'm getting, the government keeps telling me I got to go to MAID because I have cancer. And I said, what do you mean the government keeps telling you that? Well, I keep getting mail from the government. What she was telling me is she was getting these little pamphlets that were mailed out to everybody, letting them know that the service was available. So it depends how you take this information, what you're going to do with this information, and how you're going to use it. But I devolve. I'm done for the evening. It's 9:48. I appreciate everyone joining us up. Actually, I want to stop for a second. I feel like UPW didn't actually get a moment to kind of say his thoughts and wrap it up. He kind of counteracted a few thoughts. My phone battery's dying, so I can give you like a minute. Would you like that?
That'd be great. So the first thing I want to say is sorry for such a sensitive topic. I understand that it's very sensitive for many people. I'm sorry about that. The other thing I want to say is that my source, I know people are saying it's not real, and first thing, my source is BBC, and I also found it on the NH coalition for like preventing, like, the word, I guess I can't say it. And I also found it on Wikipedia. So I found it on 3 separate sources, which I think means it's a valid source. I'm very sorry to bring up such a sensitive thing. I understand people's arguments. I'm just saying that I just find it sad how much more is being used in Canada than other countries. I just wanted to discuss that and say what that might say about our general country and the state of our general country. 16 times the use, and I looked at elderly rates. It's 16.1 versus 17% of the country, so very similar percent elderly rates. Only 1% difference. So I wouldn't say that that's a massive difference either. Anyways, I'm sorry for discussing such a sensitive topic, but I felt like that my sources were true, and the elderly population thing isn't much of a factor due to the 1% difference. Anyways, everyone have a good night.
Have a good evening. Thank you for joining us. So that's another evening of the Beaver Network. We appreciate you all coming here and doing the hard work to have these topics. UPW, I do appreciate you having you here and bringing up some of these topics. We've been taught over many years that we can't talk politics, we can't talk about money, we can't talk about religion. And I think that's wrong. We need a space to have these uncomfortable conversations and to debate them, because that's how we find answers on the other side. So I appreciate you all for doing the hard work. We're the Beaver Network. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Facebook. We have a Discord. If you want to join our Discord, you can. We have subscriptions. And what are we, Thursday night? Oh, join us tomorrow night. We will be tomorrow night's debate night. So we'd love to see you there if you're interested. And that's all I have to say right now. Thanks for being here, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Everyone.
Love you guys. Bye.
Bye.